Chapter 683. A highly anticipated King Pill-level fight came to an end amidst the laughter of countless people. The Wuxia League side had achieved a brilliant victory that exceeded anyone's expectations. Although in terms of the score, it was a narrow win of 3-2, except for the undoubted victory of the number 1 King Pill Wang Wu in 9 regions, the fight led by Wang Lu was actually just a draw of 2-2. However, the real victory was beyond the score. Lu Li not only won the first match, but also perfectly killed Little Poison Immortal, killing a slaughtering devil whose hands were stained with the blood of the Wuxia League cultivators. Although Zhu Shiao failed to win the second match, she forced Xiaofan into a sorry state, like a clown. In the third match, Quan Zouhua was the most ferocious. She swallowed up the opponent's most powerful ravenous wolf and turned it into energy for her own growth. The Dixian side not only lost the score, but also lost the lives of 2 of their generals. It must be known that these Dixian side were all elite veterans who had experienced countless battles against the fallen immortals in the past. After waking up after 16,000 years of sleep, any one of them could turn the clouds and rain with one turn of the hand in 9 regions. But now, 2 of them were lost in this battle, an unprecedented loss. In contrast, the loss of face and IQ of Bai Zhe in the last fight was not so important. Therefore, after this battle, the Dixian camp was silent. The gloomy atmosphere spread among more than 100 people and lasted for a long time. This was the first time in the grand competition in the past few months. Because although there were more than 100 people in the Dixian camp, only a few of the main forces such as Xian Mo and Bai Zhe participated enthusiastically. Most of the rest chose to watch. They didn't care much about this grand competition. Therefore, when Wang Lu began to win in a row, they just regarded it as a joke, pointed it out, and then went back to their own business. Then, the news of the death of Little Poison Immortal and Ravenous Wolf came. Even those who didn't care about the grand competition at all could not help but turn their eyes at this time. What's the matter with you guys? Of course, the object of blame would not be the dead, but the survivors. Xiaofan was a slaughtering devil, so no one wanted to talk to him. Therefore, the object of blame would only be Bai Zhe and Mirage Boy. The illusionary child didn't have anything to say about his failure. He used an illusion technique to summarize the situation that day and threw down a sentence: whoever has the ability can go fight with that heretic. If you can win, I'll give my 1,000 illusionary immortal spirit to him. He then swaggered off. The grandeur of the defeated army was even bigger than the winner. However, when it came to Bai Zhe, there was really no way to avoid it. The opponent was not an outside path cultivator, and his strength was at the peak of Jindan stage. So, as an Earth Immortal, especially as the deputy of the Earth Immortal camp, what reason did Bai Zhe have to lose? Your strength far surpasses your opponent, the immortal artifacts in your possession far surpass your opponent, and your combat experience far surpasses your opponent. On what basis exactly did you lose? At the end of the day, it could probably only be attributed to a problem of intelligence. However, the humiliation that a problem of intelligence could bring to a person was far greater than a gap in strength or a gap in magical equipment. Bai Zhe wasn't a vain person. However, when he returned to Dixian's camp in defeat and heard a wave of questioning and condemnation, it was impossible for him to say that he didn't have any thoughts. His immortal Tao was the Tao of negation. In the Dixian camp, he was specifically responsible for voicing out different opinions. Even the most prestigious leader of the past had been publicly slapped in the face by him many times if he made the slightest mistake. Now, it was his turn to make a mistake. Would Bai Zhe show mercy? The answer, of course, was no. Bai Zhe was ruthless to others, but he was equally ruthless to himself. With my abilities, I'm no longer suitable for any position in the camp. From now on, I'm just an ordinary member of the camp. This was the explanation that Bai Zhe gave to everyone, an explanation that surprised everyone. Everyone knew that Bai Zai's position in the camp was second only to the former leader's elder brother. He was a well-deserved deputy in the camp. Even Black, whose words carried the most weight today, didn't have a high position as Bai Zai in the past. And more importantly, Bai Zai had a unique veto power in the camp. In short, when Bai Zai thought that something was seriously infeasible, he could use his authority to forcibly veto it. Of course, because this authority was too important, the Dixian leader only gave him 3 chances. In the long struggle with the fallen immortals, Bai Zai used his authority twice. Each time, he overruled the order of the Dixian leader. One of them saved the lives of many people. The other time, the gain and loss couldn't be seen, but after all, it couldn't be counted as wrong. In fact, it was with those 2 successes that Bai Zai really established his position in the camp. And now, there was only one time left for that supreme authority. Although it was only one time, its significance was extraordinary. The veto power given to him by the leader could veto everything, including the life of the Dixian leader. In other words, if Bai Zai really didn't like a person, he could even kill him in one word. However, now Bai Zai took the initiative to give up this power. For this reason, many people secretly breathed a sigh of relief, because Bai Zai was really an unpleasant guy, and most of the people in the camp had a very bad relationship with him. Bai Zai, you don't have to be so impulsive. The opponent is Wang Lu. It's not a big deal to lose, however, at this time, Xian Mo, who was usually quite at odds with Bai Zai, was the first to stand up and try to retain him. However, Bai Zai's mind had been made up, and it was difficult to reverse it. He said, "It doesn't matter if I lose, but I can't shirk the responsibility for losing like this." After saying that, seeing that Xian Mo was still unwilling, Bai Zai also sighed. "I know that I've never been liked by others, and I've never respected boss as much as you guys do. You guys hate me and even hate me, but I don't care. But actually, I don't care. Even if you get angry out of humiliation and ignore boss' last will and kill me directly, I won't care." It was the first time that Xian Mo heard Bai Zai speak like this, and he couldn't help but ask, "Then what do you care about?" "I care about right and wrong." Bai Zai said very seriously, "I'm a very slow person, and I can't learn boss's wisdom, and I can't learn you guys' slyness, so I can't care about too many things. I only care about right and wrong, and if it's wrong, I'll reject it." Xian Mo said patiently, "Isn't that good? The problem is, I can't tell right from wrong now." Bai Zai's voice was a bit bitter. "In that case, what's the use of me in the Dixian camp?" Xian Mo hurriedly said, "It's just a failure. What's more, the person who arranged the battle array is Black. Even if you have to bear the responsibility, it's not your turn to bear all the responsibility, right? Boss has given you this important task, how can you just give it up?" Bai Zai was silent for a long time, looked at Xian Mo very seriously, and then said, "Boss is dead." When the Dixian camp fell into silence, on the other hand, the Wuxia League naturally rejoiced. It was not an exaggeration to describe this victory with gorgeous words, so people were too lazy to describe it too much. A carnival was staged in the City of Immortals. Since the start of the grand competition, the several months of repression were released at this moment. The ecstatic cultivators staged all kinds of absurd plays all over the City of Immortals. However, in the midst of the frenzy, there were also many people who always remained calm. For example, the chief planner of the Wuxia League, Wang Lu, who single-handedly directed the whole victory. The courtyard in Immortal 5 area was as quiet as ever. The breeze blew the green willows, and the paper fluttered, brushing away the noise outside the courtyard. Even the voices in the courtyard seemed soft and gentle. "Wang Lu, you're such a fool." A woman said helplessly, "For a victory, you don't even want your own life." "That's fine. After all, your little King Pill's life is not valuable. The problem is that you should at least discuss with me about the golden silkworm insect, same body insect, and 5-color earth puppet. Wang Lu responded sarcastically, after the discussion, you recommend me a special counterfeit that can achieve 80% of the effect of the original product, but only 1/10 of the cost. The woman confidently said, from the point of view of cost-effectiveness, that's a wise choice. That's true. That's why I dealt with the several immortal level props that you applied for the special training last time. The next moment, the woman's sharp voice cut through the quiet atmosphere of the courtyard, Wang Lu, you bitch. Just you wait. After that, a green sword shadow flew out like a bolt of lightning. It was obvious that it was in a hurry to do something. Inside the room, Wang Lu sighed and lay back down. This was his bedroom, next to the office study. In the bedroom, there were quaint and elegant furniture, immortal plants with rich spiritual energy, and priceless incense provided by the mysterious Sky Mansion, a subsidiary of the Wuxia League. At this time, Wang Lu enjoyed the treatment of a senior elder of the Heavenly Sage Hall. Even the quilt on his body had a magical and mysterious effect. A quilt was enough to bankrupt a small sect at the bottom of the Wuxia League. Unfortunately, all kinds of luxuries added up could not hide the sickly look on Wang Lu's face. Of course, from the look on his face, Wang Lu was still relaxed. Since he achieved some success in non-phase method, it was difficult to see his painful and embarrassed expression. However, as long as one was not blind, one could see his weakness at this time. Behind a brilliant victory, of course, there was a painful price. The Earth Immortals paid the price of 2 lives and a human face. The union of 10,000 immortals seemed to have won a great victory, but that was only because all the losses were on Wang Lu alone. Not to mention, how could it be so easy to resist the poison of little poison immortal with same body insect? If it were any other king pill, the flesh and blood would have been separated and turned into a pool of pus and blood. Even if Wang Lu's attainment in non-phase method was amazing, and he had prepared a whole furnace of detoxification pills, the process was still difficult. Not to mention that it didn't take long for him to control the 5-color soil puppet to fight against Bai Zhe in a short but exciting fight. Using the soil puppet as a substitute would not aggravate the physical injury, but the burden on the primordial spirit was unavoidable. In the case that the poison had not been completely removed, the primordial spirit had to bear the burden again. The pressure on Wang Lu could be imagined. After the fight, the others rejoiced. However, after ridiculing Bai Zhe, Wang Lu vomited blood and fainted on the spot in his master's arms. Fortunately, he had expected this. When he ridiculed Bai Zhe, he was lurking in the dark, so no one could see that he was wearing a golden jade outfit. However, after the fierce battle, the injury that should be healed had to be healed. Fortunately, there was one of the top detoxification experts in the entire 9 regions in the room. The witch doctor of the desolate age, Wu. Chapter 684. Wu had always been mysterious. Among the several good friends of Wang Wu, her origin was the most mysterious. The others basically had reliable origins. For example, the barbarian girl Yu came from the Song clan of the Red Wave Lake in Min region. Shao Qi was a loose cultivator, but in his early years, he was a Zen cultivator under the White Tower Temple of the eastern border region. Zhang Miao was also a loose cultivator, but her inherited method was inextricably linked to the 10,000 Arts sect. Only Wu was extremely mysterious. No one had ever heard of her name before. It was as if she jumped out of thin air and then established a solid friendship with Wang Wu. If it weren't for the slender old man who said the word dark witch race, perhaps until now, people's understanding of Wu would still be a blank. With the clue of the dark witch race, many sects with rich collections quickly dug out more information. The history books passed down from the ancient times described the great magical ability of the dark witch race in the Age of Desolation. Between the lines, one could clearly see the fear of the recorder. Unfortunately, the clue ended there. After the end of the Age of Desolation, the Dark Witch race disappeared along with the Age of Desolation. What happened after that could not be verified at all. The Age of Desolation was a big mystery in today's immortal cultivation world. Many cultivators who were keen on archaeology were fascinated and regretful about that era. Every few decades or hundreds of years, an accidental archaeological excavation would find the relics of the Age of Desolation, which could make people in the circle rejoice. As for the appearance of a Wu, the inheritor of the Age of Desolation, it was simply a legend in the archaeological world. Were it not for Wang Wu and Wang Lu, the pair of master and disciple, a Wu would have long been taken away by those enthusiastic archaeologists as specimens. And now, this living fossil of 9 regions was sitting quietly in Wang Lu's bedroom, holding a round beetle in her hand. She then stared at Wang Lu seriously without speaking. After sending his master away, Wang Lu had just breathed a sigh of relief. When he turned his head and saw the beetle in a Wu's hand, he was startled. "I think I'm fine now." A Wu tilted her head, revealing a puzzled look. Wang Lu immediately explained, "I think I'm in a good state now, so I don't need any special treatment. Little Poison Immortal is dead, and the residual poison in my body can be eliminated with my own resistance." A Wu's head tilted even more, and then she wrinkled her nose. "Are you pretending?" Wang Lu was immediately startled. "Miss, what do you mean by that?" A Wu then said, "Xiao Wu told me that if you have no ability but insist on saying that you have ability, it's called pretending." Wang Lu was silent. He felt that it was a bit difficult to explain this problem to Miss A Wu. A Wu didn't say anything more. She forcibly opened Wang Lu's quilt and threw the beetle in. F***ck. Wang Lu was shocked. In the next moment, he felt a chill in his abdomen. The beetle had already pounced over, its dagger-like mouth piercing into his abdomen. At this time, he was poisoned, and his non-phase method was almost on the verge of dispersing. His defense was less than 1/10 of his perfect state. However, even so, he was almost immune to the attack below Shidon stage. However, in front of this ordinary beetle, his strong physical defense was as if it didn't exist. Fortunately, the beetle was not used to harm people. After it pierced into Wang Lu's abdomen, it began to suck the poison in his body. In a moment, most of the blue color on Wang Lu's face was gone. However, the beetle that Wang Lu secretly resisted naturally had an extraordinary side effect. After a cup of tea worth of time, most of the poison in Wang Lu's body was gone, and he seemed to be a bit thinner. Although the muscles on his face didn't move, his expression was obviously a bit stiff. "What's wrong, are you not feeling well?" A Wu frowned. In order to paralyze the host, this beetle should spit out a secretion that stimulates pleasure. "Is it ineffective on you?" Wang Lu gritted his teeth. "You think too much, the effect is very good." It was just that, inexplicably, there was a surge of pleasure in his lower abdomen, which most people would not feel at ease to enjoy. Only a bonobo could enjoy pleasure at any time and anywhere. However, after listening to Wang Lu's answer, A Wu's brows wrinkled even tighter. "Don't you like pleasure, like pain? You're really a strange person. I finally know why the famous Dark Wizard race was exterminated. Your race is really good at chatting." A Wu tilted her head and thought for a moment. "Right?" After a while, when A Wu saw that the poison in Wang Lu's body had almost subsided, she said, "For the next 3 days, take a good rest. Don't use your true yuan at will, and don't fight with people. The side effect of the detoxification insect is very strong. You don't have the blood of the witch race, so you can only offset part of it with your non-phase method." Understood. Although the process of receiving medical treatment was somewhat unsatisfactory, Wang Lu at least understood that he should respect the doctor when the other party was seriously treating him. He would not vent his anger on the doctor like some mobs who deserved their whole family to die. However, as a doctor, A Wu did not have the consciousness of a doctor's parental heart. After dealing with the poison problem, she immediately changed the topic. "Give me the things you promised me." Wang Lu did not hesitate and immediately took out a few things from his mustard seed bag. A slightly smelly porcelain bottle, a piece of air-dried leather, a piece of blurred flesh, and a handful of golden residue. "The spoils of the 4 battles are all here. Little Poison Immortal's poisonous blood, Shuaro 2's human skin apron fragments, Ravenous Wolf's remains, and the residue of the negation seal. Cherish them, any one of them is priceless and irreplaceable." This was a matter of course. The 3 props provided by a Wu, any one of them was a priceless treasure. It was not that a Wu had spent immeasurable effort to cultivate them, but their role was irreplaceable. Without same-body goo, golden silkworm goo, and 5-color earth puppet, it was impossible to have the brilliant victory under the leadership of Wang Lu. And what was the value of the props that could bring victory? It was immeasurable. For such a victory, the Wuxia League was even willing to sacrifice their immortal treasures. Unfortunately, even if the immortal treasures were really sacrificed, the result would not be particularly favorable. In terms of immortal treasures, the number of immortal treasures in the hands of the Dixian camp was also not small. And the 3 props that could bring victory were of course more valuable than immortal treasures. A Wu even took out immortal treasures, so it was only natural for her to ask for some in return. It was just that the value of these 4 spoils of war was equally good, so Wang Lu repeatedly emphasized it to show the great sacrifice he had made. A Wu didn't care so much. She glanced around, nodded, and said, "There is more." Wang Lu asked, "What else?" "We agreed that I will give you same-body goo, golden silkworm goo, and 5-color earth puppet, and then all the spoils of war will belong to me." Wang Lu said, "Yes, they are all here, you can take your time. It must be more than these, take out the rest." Wang Lu was surprised, how can it be more than these? Where is the rest? A Wu shook her head, "Xiao Wu told me that you are her disciple and have inherited her mantle." "Yes, and then?" At present, Wang Lu was not clear how close Wang Wu was with these good friends. Therefore, he did not say that in addition to the master-disciple relationship, the real relationship between him and Wang Wu was so complicated that it was necessary to reformulate ethical standards. A Wu didn't think so much and said naturally, "Since you have inherited her mantle, then you must have also inherited her shamelessness. When Xiao Wu divides the spoils of war, she always hides some, so of course you will also hide some. What is on the table is only a part, and the rest is kept by you. If someone sees through all this, you will share the spoils with her." After a Wu finished speaking, she stretched out her hand, "However, I have already seen through everything, so give me the remaining part." Wang Lu didn't say a word. After a long silence, he took out a porcelain bottle from his mustard seed bag, "That's all." A Wu nodded and picked up all the things on the table. "You can take your time to rest, I'll leave you to it. But I haven't tested the quality of those things yet. If there's any problem, I'll come back to you. Your injury is not completely healed, and there is still a trace of poison left in your body, so don't always try to deceive me, I won't be fooled again and again." With that, this witch doctor with an incomparably sincere expression stored all the spoils of war into a skull at his waist, and then left with light steps. On the sickbed, Wang Lu's mood was complicated. Since his debut, Wang Lu had repeatedly won with his wisdom. The opponents who were played by him in the palm of his hand were innumerable. But just now, it was really a tragic sight. A Wu's experience of the world was not deep, and her heart was without shrewdness. Her simplicity was even more exaggerated than Lu Li's. As a result, she saw through his little stash at a glance. Wang Lu did intercept a bottle of poisonous blood, not for anything else, but to consider that it might be useful in the future competition. But stash was still stash. If it were Wang Wu's temperament, after exposing Wang Lu's behavior, she would have ridiculed him. However, a Wu didn't say anything and just picked up the things. However, this was actually a greater blow to Wang Lu, because he felt that his conscience, which had dried up for many years, seemed to have been condemned. In fact, a Wu's straightforward attitude could be considered as not giving people face. However, listening to her words, "I won't be fooled again and again," would only make the listener feel sad and pity, completely unable to get angry. Wang Lu only felt that the culprit who made this naive girl fall for it again and again should be struck by lightning. As soon as he thought of this, he heard a leisurely and relaxed voice floating in from the outside. "Ha ha ha, Wang Lu, you slut, you used processed goods to perfunctorily brush me off. Fortunately, I reacted in time. Just now, I had a brainwave and sold that pile of junk to a Wu at its original price. A Wu is really a treasure bag, there's everything in that string of skulls on her belt, ha ha ha." Wang Lu sighed and, regardless of his injury, forcibly circulated his true yuan and released a spell. "What the, you traitorous disciple, you dare to strike me with lightning?" Chapter 685. Wang Lu's injury was decisively healed after 3 days. However, when he got out of bed, he felt that the whole world had been turned upside down. The first was the work. During the 3 days of recuperation, Wang Lu boldly used Hai Yunfan to temporarily replace him. This pushed the relatively low-key disciple of 10,000 art sect to the forefront of the struggle, which made him flustered for a while. Because of Wang Lu's excellent performance as the chief planner, more and more work had been confidently and boldly handed over to Wang Lu by Supreme Hichu. That kind of workload, if it were any other executive elder of Heavenly Sage Hall, would have long complained. However, Wang Lu handled it easily, mainly because he was too bold and daring, and could frequently use the tactic of cutting the Gordian knot. Unfortunately, there was only one Wang Lu in 9 regions. Now that he was injured, the staff gap was immediately exposed. Hai Yunfan was undoubtedly a qualified bureaucrat. Unfortunately, compared with Wang Lu, there was still a big gap. This gap was not necessarily a gap in intelligence. Dealing with daily affairs did not require a genius or original idea, but more of the accumulation of experience. Hai Yunfan had been Wang Lu's secretary for a long time, so his intelligence and experience were enough to deal with it. What was difficult to deal with was his boldness. Wang Lu's boldness was too strong. In many cases, even the high-level elders of Heavenly Sage Hall, he dared to directly refute the other party's face. In any case, Hichu Daoran, the biggest person in Heavenly Sage Hall, gave him face, so he didn't have to give anyone face. However, if it were Hai Yunfan, even if he had 100 guts, he would not dare to do what Wang Lu did. He too favored Wang Lu, but he never favored Hai Yunfan. Those elders might not dare to do anything to Wang Lu, but they could easily vent their anger on a mere Hai Yunfan. Therefore, when Hai Yunfan dealt with official business, he felt that his hands and feet were tied. There were many things that he couldn't make a decision on, so he could only push them all to Wang Lu, who would recover in a few days. Even so, there were still many things that he couldn't push away, which made Hai Yunfan complain incessantly, and he couldn't avoid making mistakes during the process. With Hai Yunfan's identity and status, if he was in Wang Lu's position, any mistake could lead to disastrous consequences. Fortunately, he had the right timing, and in the end, he managed to get through the crisis without any mishaps. The so-called timing referred to the excellent record of the Wuxia League in the grand competition in the past 3 days. After the end of the King Pill level challenge, 7 more matches were held in the next 3 days. There were both civil and military matches, and the Wuxia League had won 6 of them. One of them was a Yuanying stage level challenge. The 4th elder of the Lingjian school, Zhou Ming, appeared and severely injured Shuero II, who was in Yuanying stage, with 1 sword strike, splitting his already incomplete human skin apron in half. This battle simply made the people of the Wuxia League burn. The previous victory in the King Pill level challenge was due to Wang Lu's frequent tricks, but this Yuanying stage-level challenge was clearly won by Zhou Ming's strength. The dazzling sword light easily tore through Shuero II's defense. Even if he brought out a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, he couldn't prevent the arrival of failure. Although Zhou Ming showed very obvious symptoms of exhaustion after the battle, in the whole process of the battle that lasted for a whole incense stick of time, Zhou Ming crushed his opponent all the way, which made people intoxicated. There was actually a person in the Wuxia League who could rely on his strength to defeat Dixian in a martial arts fight. This was simply too incredible. Of course, at this time, people seemed to have unanimously excluded the 9 regions number 1 King Pill level challenge from the human category. The celebration caused by this victory was enough to cover up Hai Yunfan's slight mistakes in his work. Therefore, when Wang Lu returned from his illness, Hai Yunfan was finally able to wipe his cold sweat and hand over the seal that symbolized his full strength. After receiving the seal, Wang Lu saw a lot of urgent and overdue official business, as well as a lot of trouble caused by Hai Yunfan's improper handling. For this, Hai Yunfan was naturally quite sorry, although he was also somewhat dissatisfied with the forced arrangement of work by Wang Lu. But after all, the mistake was accumulated under his hands, so he didn't want to shirk it. However, Wang Lu had already expected this. He just patted Hai Yunfan's shoulder and comforted him, "It's good that you're alive." Hai Yunfan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "So you were expecting me to make a terrible mistake in these 3 days and then sacrifice myself heroically? Forget it. If something really happened, would just push all the responsibility to you and then pack up and leave. You're a lonely man without any worries, but I still have a wife here. But on the other hand, it's good that you're alive." Although he only had the authority for 3 days, Hai Yunfan still left a deep impression on many elders. There were good and bad impressions, but after all, he was truly remembered. To Hai Yunfan, who was gradually getting bored in the aspect of cultivation, this was undoubtedly the opening of a new door. After taking back the authority, Wang Lu quickly began to clean up the accumulated problems left by Hai Yunfan. But when he really began to take over the files of the past 3 days, he couldn't help but frown. "Little Hai, what's going on?" Hai Yunfan, who had resumed his secretary position, looked at the files pointed out by Wang Lu and said, "As you can see, the Wuxia League has won in a row in the 3 days that you were away." Seeing that Wang Lu's eyes gradually turned sharp, Hai Yunfan knew that this question was vague. He paused and then said, "2 of them were brilliant performances by Luo Xiao." Wang Lu and Luo Xiao didn't get along. This was known to many people in the Wuxia League. Of course, Hai Yunfan, as his secretary, was clear about this. According to Wang Lu's opinion, it was best to block this little baldy of Hua Yan school from the beginning to the end, never giving him a chance to show his face, so that his hard work in the special training of Royal Soldier sect would be completely wasted. Many people were curious as to why Wang Lu would target Luo Xiao like this. Although Wang Lu was not a magnanimous saint, with his current prestige and status, targeting Luo Xiao, who was obviously not on the same level as him, was somewhat beneath his status. Of course, as the disciple of Wang Wu, the master of non-phase peak, losing his status was also a bit of a fluke. Hai Yunfan once seriously asked, and Wang Lu, after thinking about it carefully, told him, "Because he is too ugly." This answer simply made Hai Yunfan sad, but later Wang Lu also seriously said, "There is no clear reason. His performance in all aspects is good, but I just don't want to see him. To be honest, I can only say that he is not pleasing to the eye. And with my excellent aesthetic ability, if I am not pleasing to the eye, it can only mean that he is too ugly. That's all." Although Wang Lu's explanation was not very convincing, his meaning was very clear, and later on, it was indeed implemented. As long as Luo Xiao was not allowed to appear, Wang Lu would stop him no matter what. Therefore, when he saw that Luo Xiao won 2 games in a row, he had to question Hai Yunfan on what exactly he did. In the grand competition, the important ones were usually personally arranged by Wang Lu, while the others needed to be reported to Wang Lu for approval. In the absence of Wang Lu, Hai Yunfan was, of course, responsible for the approval and review. Then, Hai Yunfan let Luo Xiao appear twice and win both times. Wang Lu didn't think that this was negligence. Hai Yunfan was very careful and thoughtful. That was why Wang Lu chose him as his secretary. However, when Hai Yunfan made an unexpected move, Wang Lu certainly needed an explanation. "I can't stand the pressure. His reason for fighting is too good, so I can't refute it." Hai Yunfan said, "The person who recommended him is the elder of Heavenly Sage Hall. I pushed him on the grounds that there are more suitable players in the competition. However, the first choice of the two matches coincidentally withdrew for various reasons. Thus, the second choice, Luo Xiao, can naturally come in as a substitute." Wang Lu immediately set up a task force to investigate the reason for the withdrawal of the two first choices, and then insist that there must be a great grievance. If the truth is not found out, we will have no face-to-face with the thousands of cultivators who participated in the grand competition. Then, the direct beneficiary, Luo Xiao, will be listed as the primary suspect for detention and interrogation, and then take this opportunity to let the third choice come out. "Do you still need me to teach you this procedure?" Hai Yunfan sighed and said, "Only you can use this procedure, so don't embarrass me. What's more, Luo Xiao's backing is very strong. When I was forced to do nothing, I threw the burden completely on you, claiming that you have made it clear that Luo Xiao has other uses, so I don't want him to appear so early." Wang Lu interrupted again, "When you relay my words, your attitude should be a bit tougher. Just say that I once said that Luo Xiao is a spy from Dixian's side who infiltrated our camp. He should be immediately put into the dark prison and severely tortured. We must not let him ruin our good deeds in the competition." Hai Yunfan was silent for a while and then decided not to entangle with Wang Lu on this topic. In short, that's the situation. After Luo Xiao won twice, his prestige grew. Coupled with some people deliberately adding fuel to the fire, he has been hailed as the glory of the King Pill by many people. Although it's far less exaggerated than yours, he is about to catch up with Lu Li and Zhu Shiyao. I suggest you don't force him in the future." Wang Lu also sighed and said, "That's why I reminded you to crush him to death before he makes a conclusive achievement." In the final analysis, the grand competition was, after all, not Wang Lu's word alone. Even Hichu Daoren could not act recklessly. If the other party had already occupied the reason, even if it was Wang Lu, his hands and feet would inevitably be tied. Now, I can only ask Miss A Wu to secretly put a bug on him. The desolate age of insect technique has endless changes. When the time comes, I'll fake the scene and push it to the Dixian camp. Wait for me to think about how to arrange the scene of the murder." With that, Wang Lu fell into deep thought. Hai Yunfan was shocked. How much hatred did Wang Lu have for Luo Xiao? He had never heard of that baldy from Hua Yan school being disrespectful to Wang Lu. It's not just against Luo Xiao. Although I don't like that baldy, since he can bring victory to the Wuxia League, of course, I won't embarrass him. The problem is that the backer behind him is really an eyesore. After the matter of the Master of Heavenly Book building, there are still people who want to jump out and show their existence. I absolutely cannot tolerate this kind of thing. Such an explanation was easy for Hai Yunfan to accept. Wang Lu's point of view had always been like this: in the grand competition, the Wuxia League was the weak side. If they wanted to fight against the strong, they must exert their limited strength to the limit. In this process, the waste caused by the disagreement of opinions and voices must not be allowed. Therefore, even if the means were a bit disgraceful, Wang Lu still pursued the pattern of one word alone. Hai Yunfan understood Wang Lu's idea very well and supported his approach. The only problem was, could one man's word really do it? In these 3 days, undercurrents were surging. Chapter 686. In short, there are always endless people who are unwilling to be left out. In the study room, Wang Lu flipped through the files that Hai Yunfan collected and sighed with emotion. This was the information that Hai Yunfan collected during the period when Wang Lu was injured. Taking advantage of the time when he worked overnight, he collected it. Using the backing of Luo Xiao as a clue, it implicated a long list of cultivators. The big backer that Hai Yunfan feared was naturally Shizhou Jin, who was also the master of Luo Xiao. The leader of the Four-Element School was famous in the Wuxia League. He was known for his powerful strength as well as his picky bloodline theory. He regarded lowly cultivators as ants, and artificial spirit root as a stain on immortal cultivation. For this reason, the relationship between the Four-Element School and Xingjing sect was not very harmonious. As for those mortals who had no chance to cultivate, they were not even as good as weeds and could not enter his field of vision at all. In the eyes of Shizhou Jin, there were not that many creatures in 9 regions. Only the noble and talented cultivators could be regarded as human beings. The rest were just like stones. This stubborn bloodline theory had offended too many people. After all, in the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, aristocratic families were not the mainstream. Although they had various ways to ensure that the probability of their descendants having spirit root was far higher than that of mortals, their fertility rate had always been low. More than 80% of the cultivators in 9 regions came from individual cultivators. In other words, 80% of the cultivators were not human beings in the eyes of Shizhou Jin. To these non-human beings, Shizhou Jin's attitude had always been straightforward: he couldn't see them. He would not be like some extremists, who would directly confront the heretics. He would only ignore the other party. However, in many cases, this made people even more uncomfortable. At a high-level meeting, the person in charge of the organizer cupped his hands and saluted to Shizhou Jin with a warm smile, but he was ignored. At the banquet, the elder at the same table as him politely toasted, but he turned a blind eye to it. There were even times when he encountered evil cultivators wreaking havoc on the streets. He stepped forward and killed the evil cultivator, but he turned a blind eye to the heavily injured cultivator who fell to the ground and bled profusely. He just sat there and watched as the cultivator died of exhaustion. Such a Shizhou Jin would definitely offend too many people. Among the high-level elders of Heavenly Sage Hall, he had always been a controversial person. However, in many people's eyes, Shizhou Jin was unquestionably a good person. This was because he was generous, loyal, and honest to those who could be considered human in his eyes. Almost all virtues could be placed on him, and he was fully deserving of them. That high-level meeting that ignored the organizer was the result of him taking advantage of the current situation to resolve the dispute between the 2 families that had deep grudges. One meeting saved the lives of the 2 families and thousands of people related to them. At that banquet, he had condescended to come to a low-ranking aristocratic family and officiate the wedding, all because the ancestor of the family was old friends with him. The evil cultivator who was killed by him was the famous evil cultivator in the evil path. His real strength was similar to his. It was easy to repel him, but it was as difficult as ascending to heaven to kill him. However, on that day, Shizhou Jin did not hesitate to detonate 2 top-grade spiritual treasures and cut off his own arm to crush that evil cultivator. Shizhou Jin was such a cultivator with clear likes and dislikes. In his 1,500 years of cultivation, he made outstanding contributions to the Wuxia League and made a lot of friends. Even the most hostile to Shizhou Jin had to admit that he was absolutely qualified to serve as a senior elder in Heavenly Sage Hall and a standing member of the organizing committee of the grand competition. When it came to his bloodline argument, he could only shake his head and sigh. The above information can explain why Shizhou Jin doesn't like me. Although I do have void spirit root, I came from the mountains, so there's nothing to say about it. However, it can't explain why he likes Luo Xiao. That little baldy from Flower Stern School is also not from an aristocratic family. As Wang Lu flipped through the information on Shizhou Jin, he casually concluded, although Shizhou Jin is a character with mixed reputation in the Wanxian League, there are many people who support him, from high-rank sects to aristocratic families. In addition, his popularity among the monsters and spirit beasts is also quite good. It's not an exaggeration to say that he has a force. As he said that, a voice of doubt came from the opposite side. Why does this kind of person have so many supporters among the monsters and monsters? Bai Shixian opened her clear eyes and asked incredulously. As an immortal beast of the cloud platform, she could not understand this phenomenon. Because it was reasonable to say that the monsters and spirit beasts were the biggest victims of the bloodline argument. Those who emphasized bloodline would at least recognize the equally noble human beings, but they would never recognize creatures other than human beings. Even the pure immortal beasts were no exception. That being the case, why would the monsters and spirit beasts support a bloodline argument? Wang Lu also found it strange. According to the information, Shizhou Jin treats the monsters and spirit beasts much better than humans. He even rarely eats the meat of the monsters. Bai Shixuan's eyes widened. This person is so strange. Indeed, very strange, but what's more strange is you. Why did you come here instead of going on your honeymoon with Lao Ai? Wang Lu closed the file and temporarily stopped thinking about Shizhou Jin's problem. He turned his attention to Bai Shixian. Bai Shixian slightly frowned, and wrinkles appeared on her cute little nose. You're really annoying. Wang Lu was surprised to hear this. Little Bai, do you have a fever? Why are you talking nonsense? Bai Shixuan's attachment to Wang Lu was not a secret in the entire Spirit Sword Mountain. When Wang Lu met the Grand Cloud Fairy on the Grand Cloud Mountain, the fairy scattered her 1,000 years of cultivation and died. Thus, a new mountain spirit, Bai Shixian, was born on the Grand Cloud Mountain. For her, Wang Lu was a very special existence. Therefore, for a long time, people saw that Bai Shixian was obedient to Wang Lu, like the most well-behaved wife, or daughter. Unfortunately, now it seemed that this daughter seemed to have entered the rebellious phase and began to scold Wang Lu. Humph, who told you to encourage that idiot Lao Ai to pester me? Bai Shixian was quite dissatisfied. She and I are both girls. You picked her up, so you should be responsible for guiding her in the right direction, not indulging her. Wang Lu earnestly said, you should try to understand the beauty of a lily. This world is not lacking in beauty, it's just lacking, hateful. Bai Shixian only used 2 words to interrupt Wang Lu's endless talk. Only Bai Shixian could use these 2 words to shut Wang Lu up. Very well, I will find a way to find 100 strong men to let Lao Ai understand that men are the truth of the world. So hateful. Okay, I'll persuade her when I'm free. You can stay here with me during this time. Bai Shixian smiled and said, okay, but what if Lao Ai shines? Then I'll put up a sign at the door, Dixian and dogs are not allowed to enter. Hey! Bai Shixian, who was a white spirit dog, suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After perfunctorily brushing off the visiting Bai Shixian, Wang Lu continued to read the files. However, the more he read, the more annoyed he became. At present, the situation of the grand competition was gradually favorable to the Wanxian League. By virtue of the morale advantage and the killing situation that he personally directed in the King Pill War, the Wanxian League began to win and score, as if to form an inertia. However, when he thought of Luo Xiao and Shizhou Jin, Wang Lu felt that the current situation was not optimistic. The advantage of the Wanxian League was that Wang Lu had successfully kneaded the incomparably large organization together and burst out amazing power. However, this kind of kneading was, after all, too difficult, and there were hidden dangers. The larger the organization, the more difficult it was to unite. To be able to do this, to a large extent, it relied on the external threat of Dixian. When the external threat weakened, the internal contradictions inevitably surged up. At the beginning, when the Wuxia League was still in an absolute weakness, there were people like the Master of Heavenly Book Building who went against the trend. Fortunately, Wang Lu suppressed them in time. Now, if Shizhou came out to make trouble, the situation would be a bit troublesome. After thinking for a long time at the desk, Wang Lu still felt that he could not let it go. It was really troublesome to deal with people like Shizhou. It was whimsical to expect it to be as easy as dealing with the Master of Heavenly Book Building. At least, Aya's tactic of smashing the door to crush him was absolutely not feasible. Shizhou had been cultivating for 1,500 years, so his fighting capacity was definitely on the same level as Aya's. If fighting was not possible. Wang Lu was silent and his eyebrows gradually twisted. After an unknown period of time, Wang Lu stood up from behind the desk and breathed a sigh of relief. In the information, although Shizhou discriminated against the civilian class, he was a straightforward person. His thoughts were almost written on his face. Meeting such a person, face to face, king to king. Immortal 6 Area, 4 Element Sect Station. Wang Lu came alone, but he saw several cultivators waiting in front of the door. 3 on the left and 3 on the right were Daoist Master King Pill, but at this time, they were placed in front of the door like doormen. Sect leader has been waiting for you for a long time. Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh. This pretentious act is really deep. Then he stepped in, not caring about the faces of the 6 doormen. It was not surprising that Shizhou guessed that he would come. Because after learning about Luo Zhao's 2 consecutive victories, he had to take action, and this action would most likely be aimed at Shizhou. The problem was, why did Shizhou, who had always been accustomed to ignoring the civilians, suddenly pay so much attention to him? With a trace of curiosity, Wang Lu walked all the way to the main hall and saw Shizhou, who had been waiting for a long time. 1,500 years did not leave too many traces on him. The person in front of him looked like a young man in his 20s, but his eyes were full of vicissitudes. There was a low table in front of the Supreme, on which there were 2 cups of tea. 1 cup was in front of him, held in his hand, and the other was placed in front of Wang Lu. Wang Lu did not stand on ceremony. He took 2 steps forward and sat opposite to Shizhou. He picked up the teacup and took a sip of the tea, and couldn't help but praise, "Good tea." Shizhou nodded, his eyes were always on Wang Lu's face. After a moment of silence, he went straight to the point. It was a serious topic that Wang Lu had never thought of. "Supreme Wang Lu, when are you going to get married and have children?" Thump. The teacup fell on the table. Chapter 687. There were not many things that could surprise Wang Lu, but Shizhou words had indeed pierced through Wang Lu's defenses. Before he visited Shizhou, he had more or less guessed what would happen when they met. Being ignored, being provoked, and even fighting, he had a corresponding plan. But Wang Lu had never expected that the other party would raise the issue of marriage. While Wang Lu was in a daze, Shizhou spoke again. "Your age and cultivation have reached the golden age. It's time to find someone to get married and have children." Wang Lu asked, "Is this a special greeting technique of your 4-phase sect?" Shizhou said, "Greeting? What greeting?" Wang Lu said. "Are you serious about what you just said?" "Of course I was serious." Shizhou found it strange. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Wang Lu said, "You look like you're provoking me," but he still took a deep breath and said, "I'd like to hear the details." Shizhou said, "I've been observing you for a long time. At first, I thought you were the same kind of bastard who stole the secrets of heaven, but I soon found that I was wrong. Noble blood flows in your body, and this blood should be passed down, so marriage and children are the inevitable choice, unless you have a disease, but you don't have to worry. I have some special elixirs to treat this kind of disease. Wang Lu couldn't say a word for a long time. After a long time, he said, I'm very good at my job. If you don't believe me, you can ask your wife to experience it. Shizhou was not angry. Instead, he smiled and said, I knew it. Since there's no problem, it couldn't be better. The sooner you get married and have children, the better. Your blood is very precious, so it's best to spread. Before the Supreme could finish, Wang Lu had to interrupt him, because there were too many questions in his mind. Supreme, don't worry. First, please explain in detail the 3 problems of stealing the secrets of heaven, noble blood, and inheritance. Shizhou frowned. What? You don't even know these questions? What did the Lingjian school teach you? Fine, I'll explain it to you from the basics. There is a limit to the number of spirit roots in the world. Shizhou's first sentence began to shake Wang Lu's common sense. There are limited spirit roots in the world? This argument was really new. It was well known that apart from man-made spirit roots, natural spirit roots were highly random. This was reflected on the individual level. When a couple gave birth to a child, it was very difficult to ensure that their offspring had spiritual roots. Of course, some of the cultivation families had more or less grasped some metaphysical theories after thousands of years of accumulation, which could increase the probability of the offspring of the family to be organic cultivators, but it was still difficult to be 100% sure. Even at the level of a large number of people, the randomness of spiritual roots was still difficult to conceal. In different eras, the quality of cultivators could be very different, and it was difficult to say whether there was any pattern. Sometimes, dozens of peerless geniuses could be born in 100 years, and sometimes, there was no outstanding talent in 400 or 500 years. This was the natural spirit roots of the 9 regions. They were highly random and difficult to grasp. If not, Shengjing sect's ancestor Lu He would not have painstakingly studied man-made spirit roots. In fact, that's a lie. Shizhou said resolutely, the spirit roots of the world are indeed scattered, but the total number has always been constant. If the distribution is more concentrated, rare geniuses will emerge endlessly, which is the so-called golden generation. If the distribution is more evenly scattered, which is our so-called low point, because there are too many mixed spirit roots that can't enter the field of vision of the cultivation world. Hearing this, Wang Lu vaguely understood the meaning of Shizhou's words. In other words, if the total number of spirit roots is constant, the higher the concentration, the better? Shizhou said, if the same spirit roots are distributed among 10 people, or among 100,000 people, which side is more beneficial to the cultivation world? Between 10 mixed spirit roots and 1 heavenly spirit root, which side is more valuable? It goes without saying, right? Wang Lu was silent for a moment, and then nodded. So, the so-called stealing of heaven's secret means that there are too many mediocre and incompetent people who scatter the distribution of spirit roots, making it difficult for the 9 regions to breed rare geniuses? Shizhou said, on this point, Daoist Wang Lu's understanding is slightly different. Mediocrity is not terrible. There are many mediocre people among my friends. Although they were born in high-ranking families, they have no hope of obtaining the king pill. But I don't think their existence is wrong. So, you mean? Shizhou was silent for a moment, and when he opened his mouth, he changed the topic. Supreme Wang Lu, in your opinion, what is the most important thing for the entire 9 regions immortal cultivation world? Wang Lu smiled and said, this is a big topic. According to the Wuxia League, it's probably peace and development. Shizhou, however, shook his head. It's reproduction. For a group, the most important thing is none other than reproduction. Supreme will probably get along well with the people of the Yin and Yang sect. However, Shizhou coldly snorted. Those evil and crooked ways. They only deserve to be spurned by me. Wang Lu thought about it and agreed. The people of the Yin and Yang sect were happy to have sex, but every time they had sex, they took enough safety measures. For a person who advocated reproduction, contraception was definitely the biggest blasphemy in the world. Shi Jiujin seemed to see through Wang Lu's thoughts, and said, reproduction and reproduction are two different things. Reproduction, as long as the Yin and Yang incarnate, is considered reproduction, but reproduction refers to the birth of creatures of the same kind as oneself. After a pause, Shi Jiujin used a vulgar metaphor that was contrary to his personal style and said, giving birth to a human is reproduction, and giving birth to a dog is just reproduction. Pfft! Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh out loud. But then he realized that Shi Jiujin's so-called reproduction in the cultivation world was definitely not in the ordinary sense of male and female intercourse. It referred to the inheritance of spiritual roots. Cultivators referred to humans who had spiritual roots and could cultivate. Then, only by giving birth to humans who could cultivate could it be considered reproduction. If cultivators gave birth to mortals with other cultivators, wouldn't it be like giving birth to a dog? Then, he also understood why Shi Jiujin was so partial to the cultivation families. It was because these families could artificially control the inheritance of spiritual roots. In a family with excellent inheritance, the union of two cultivators with heavenly spiritual roots had a high probability of giving birth to a cultivator's child. Although it took a lot of effort to make such a combination, which caused their fertility rate to not be too high, it was still much better than those individual investors who tried their luck aimlessly. At the same time, the so-called stealing the secrets of heaven was not difficult to understand. Those individual cultivators and even mortals wantonly gave birth to unknown cultivators with spiritual roots that were drowned in the long river of history. Wasn't this stealing the secrets of heaven from the cultivators? I think I can probably understand the Supreme's idea. If one assumed that the spiritual root resources in 9 regions were fixed, then, as the overall population continued to rise, the spiritual root resources must be more and more dispersed. To make an extreme assumption, if the population increased by 100 times, then it was hard to say whether the golden generation could be born. No matter how strong the randomness was, in the end, it still had to yield to the law of large numbers. At this time, the reproduction of cultivators was very important. If the cultivator group could give birth to offspring stably, they would not be robbed of too many spiritual root resources by a large number of mortals, which could maintain the development of the group. Otherwise, if they were all individual cultivators, then thousands of years later, it would be difficult for the cultivator group to have a future. No matter how strong a cultivator is, it's hard to become immortal. Immortal cultivators seek transcendence and think that they can achieve longevity by flying to the immortal world. However, the current crisis of the fallen immortal has also broken the theory of immortality. In this case, we should admit that it is difficult for an individual to be truly immortal. Only a group can be eternal, at least relatively eternal. Shi Jiujin said, throughout history, the cultivator with the longest lifespan was only 10,000 years. In today's world, the longest-lived old man of the South Pole is only 4,000 years old. However, the history of cultivators, from the Desolate Age, is at least hundreds of thousands of years old or even longer. Xingjing sect once excavated the remains of a magic weapon with a history of 2 million years. Compared to the lifespan of an individual, the group of cultivators is the real longevity. When Wang Lu heard this, he sighed and said, however, if it is difficult to ensure the reproduction of the group, the cultivators will eventually die out. Shi Jiujin said, that's exactly the case. It's really gratifying for Taoist Wang Lu to be able to understand all this so quickly. Wang Lu smiled and did not answer. Shi Jiujin's idea and even all his assertions were based on the fact that the spiritual root resources in 9 regions were constant. At present, there was no absolutely reliable evidence to prove this. Of course, Wang Lu was not questioning the other party, and even to a certain extent, he agreed with this point of view. Similarly, he also agreed with the idea of strengthening the reproduction of cultivators and improving the vitality of the group. However, like Four Elements Supreme, he took this point of view to the extreme, believing that people with the ability to reproduce were of noble blood, while the rest were just weeds that stole the secrets of heaven. He believed that only by strengthening reproduction could the race live long. Wang Lu could not agree with these points of view. However, Wang Lu did not come here to have a dispute of ideas. There were many weirdos among the elders of Heavenly Sage Hall, and many of them were more paranoid than Shizhou. Not to mention others, the one on Non-Phase Peak was a good example. He came here to maintain the stability of the Wuxia League. Shizhou should not be a spoiler in this situation. But before Wang Lu could speak, Shizhou said, "Let's get back to the topic. Taoist Wang Lu, when are you going to get married and have children? I have observed you. Although you are not a disciple of an aristocratic family, you have an unusually strong attribute of reproduction. If you marry an ordinary woman, you will definitely be able to give birth to good offspring. If the blood flowing in those disciples of aristocratic families is noble blood, then the blood flowing in your veins can be called the blood of a king." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu wrinkled his brows. Although it was good to be praised, to this point, it was simply absurd that one fan could win 10 haters. "Supreme, please stop for a moment. How did you judge what is an unusually strong attribute of reproduction in my body?" When Shizhou heard this question, he seemed to be even more surprised than Wang Lu. "Didn't you just say it yourself? You have a big tool and good skills. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone." Chapter 688. Wang Lu had always believed that whether it was as a human being or as a cultivator, one should focus on moving forward bravely. This bravery did not mean that one would not look back after hitting the wall, but that one should not regret what he had done and always look forward. But now, Wang Lu really regretted coming to Shizhou to discuss the issue of reproduction. "Immortal Wang Lu, you can trust my judgment on this point. I have been paying attention to the way of reproduction for a long time, and it is very easy to judge a person's ability to reproduce. Can you roughly explain how you judge?" Hearing Wang Lu's question, Shizhou showed a somewhat excited look. "It's very simple. First, it's the shape." "Shape?" "Yes, it's the shape of the reproductive organs. The length and diameter are the basic attributes. In addition, wait, how do you know the shape of other people?" Shizhou was quite proud. "Of course it's because I have a pair of good eyes. For this reason, I have really done some cultivation. Even through clothes, I can judge the attributes of a person's organs. However, many people will set up defensive spells outside the body to deceive the truth inside. This requires a little bit of effort, but it is not difficult for me. The shape of the organ is only the basic, in addition to the intensity of the yang energy, and then, in addition to men, I can also judge the attributes of women. Of course, this is a little more troublesome." "Please stop for a moment, Shizhou. I want to ask you something. For so many years, has anyone told you that your behavior is generally called a hooligan?" Shizhou blinked his eyes. "Why? It seems that no, then let me reluctantly say this, you are really a hooligan." Shizhou frowned, thought for a moment, and shook his head. "It doesn't matter. How the mediocre people in the world judge me has nothing to do with me. Don't I know how many people in the Wuxia League call me a bloodline dog? How many people hate me for being cold-blooded and ruthless? However, the world is heartless and treats all living things as dogs. The reproduction of a race is bound to be accompanied by a lot of cold-blooded and ruthless." Wang Lu was simply amazed by this four-element supreme. He was indeed worthy to be called a supreme because he was such a high-class rogue. Then, since we are colleagues, I would still give you a suggestion: it's better to use this kind of judgment less. Shijojin nodded and said, of course, I won't use it frequently. This comprehensive judgment is far more than a simple shape analysis. In order to be accurate, it needs to involve the field of cause and effect. In my current cultivation, the consumption is not light, so I won't use it often. Fortunately, I found that Taoist Master Wang Lu has a strong attribute. If I can give your Wang Lu's void spirit Lu's attribute, I will give you. Imagine, if 100 years, there, 100 of Taoist Wang Lu, and if as there a Dao as, Shijojin was so impassioned that even Wang Lu couldn't help but be distracted. He wondered what would the situation be like if there were 100 of him. However, if he thought about it, it would probably be very serious for him to kill each other. He was never the type of person who was willing to be under others. Of course, those were later words. The problem now was, therefore, Taoist Master Wang Lu, you should get married and have children as soon as possible. I have paid attention to your situation, and there is no lack of confidence around you. The two successor disciples of Lingjian school, the two spirit beasts by Shixian and Quan Zouhua, as well as the Night King from the Western continent, these are all your first choices. Among them, I strongly recommend you to combine with Zhu Shiyao. Her sword spirit root physique is unique. If it can be combined with your void spirit root, the future is limitless. In addition, there is Lu Li. Her brilliant sword heart is not inferior to Zhu Shiyao's stellar sword method, but it slightly overlaps with the characteristics of your void spirit root, so it should be placed second. As for Bai Shixian and Quan Zouhua, although they are not pure human beings, they have completed their transformation and have some human characteristics. If they are combined with you, there may be interesting changes, which is very beneficial to the enrichment and diversity of the population. However, the changes may be good or bad, which requires you to keep trying and win by quantity. As for the Night King from the Western continent, I advise you to be careful. If she is not of our race, her heart must be different. If she returns to the Western continent with your flesh and blood, it would not be a blessing for our 9 regions. Dogs can, but Western continent people can't. Unexpectedly, you're not only a dog fan, but also a nationalist. Speaking of which, if the goal is not limited to Lingjian school, I think Qianghua Ferry is also a good match. In terms of comprehensive quality, she is actually on the same level as Zhu Shiyao, and among the cultivators of the same generation, she is the closest to you. In addition, Zhou Mumu of Kunlun Immortal Sect is also good, and it is said that you have a good relationship with her, so the possibility of in-depth development is not low. Speaking of this, some people said that you have a relationship with several disciples of Yin and Yang school, and it seems that their leader is called Tian Daolan. I advise you to draw a clear line with them as soon as possible. Yin and Yang school is obsessed with the pleasure of men and women, which is simply a crooked path. Immortal, I really admire you for your gossiping skill. You even know what happened between me and those girls of Yin Yang sect? Shijojin snorted, but he looked a bit proud. Wang Lu was really convinced by this person. Now that he thought about it, the reason why this guy was not popular was probably not because of his bloodline. The main reason was that he was really a pervert. While thinking, he heard Shijojin said, in my opinion, if Taoist Master Wang Lu is willing to abandon his sect and seniority, there are many good choices among the senior cultivators. Wang Lu repeatedly shook his head. I don't have any sexual interest in mature women. Really? That's a pity. Speaking of which, my 8th daughter is actually not bad. She's only 300 years old this year, and she already has Yuanying stage cultivation base. No need. Well, I also think she's a bit lacking. Although my daughter's cultivation talent is also not bad, she's still not as good as you. By the way, how's your master? His cultivation base and temperament are a perfect match for you. Enough, enough. I'll seriously consider the matter of reproduction, but this time I'm not here to discuss the matter of reproduction with Supreme. Shizhou nodded. The explanation just now had greatly satisfied his desire to show off. It was time to listen to what Wang Lu had to say. First of all, let's start with Luo Xiao. May I ask why Supreme only favors Luo Xiao? He's also from a small family background. Supreme won't change your mind just because of his attainments in chess and because you won against the black and white ancestor, right? Shizhou said with a smile, of course not. It's just a small skill in chess. What's the point of mentioning it? I took a fancy to his inheritance and reproduction ability. Perhaps it's not as good as yours, but it's definitely worthy of the 4 words big tool. Before determining your attribute, I've always regarded him as the focus of the next generation of cultivators to be cultivated. Is the way you determine the focus of a cultivator's ability to reproduce? Shizhou said seriously, that's very important. Other than that, is there any other reason? Shizhou said, of course there is. I don't know what prejudice you have against Luo Xiao, but in my opinion, he's one of the few geniuses in the world. Although it's difficult for him to reach your achievements now, don't forget that you're from the Lingjian school, one of the 5 masters of the Wuxia League, while he's just a Zen cultivator from the Huayan sect. The starting point of the two of you is too different. Geniuses? Wang Lu pondered over Shizhou wording, but the uneasiness in his heart deepened. Supreme has been in contact with him for a long time. In your opinion, is this person reliable? Shizhou frowned. Zhenren Wang Lu, do you suspect that there's a problem with him? It's not really a suspicion, so I'm asking for Supreme's opinion. If there's really anything suspicious, I wouldn't have waited until now. Shizhou thought for a moment and said, no one is absolutely reliable, including you. Once you encounter enough temptation, you'll eventually betray. Wang Lu said, I don't deny this, but different people have different prices. If you want me to betray, I'm afraid no one can offer such a high price. Shizhou said, Luo Xiao is also not a person who can be easily bought. Although he's of ordinary birth and looks amiable and humble, he has extraordinary pride inside and won't tolerate being bought by others. In a sense, he has a lot in common with you. As he said this, Shizhou looked down and nodded slightly. Yes, there are indeed similarities. I say. Without waiting for Wang Lu to refute, Shizhou said, if you were him, a rising star from Huayan School, who wants to shine on the stage of the grand competition, but the person who planned everything doesn't like you, what would you do? Wang Lu frowned and said nothing. If I were you, I would give him a fair stage. According to your temperament, you shouldn't be afraid of such a challenge. Wang Lu was still silent, but in his heart, he was thinking about whether there was really any problem with his way of dealing with Luo Xiao. According to Shizhou Luo Xiao was just a genius who had a strong desire to show off and was eager to achieve something in the grand competition. If so, there was no need to suppress him. Instead, he should be given a stage to show off and make full use of his talent. Wang Lu didn't think that his vision could be better than Shizhou. Although he was a pervert, he was undoubtedly the best among the perverts. With 1,500 years of cultivation, he should not misjudge a person's position. Thinking of this, he heard Shizhou say, many people in the Wuxia League know that Taoist Master Wang Lu hates Luo Xiao. I think if Taoist Master Wang Lu can show his magnanimity on the issue of Luo Xiao, I think those few people who still have objections to Taoist Master Wang Lu will have nothing to say. Wang Lu sneered, is this the condition of cooperation proposed by Supreme? Shizhou was silent. Very well, I'll take it as Supreme's acquiescence. To be able to get the support of Supreme, what is a mere Luo Xiao? Next, I won't stop him anymore. I'll just let him play at will on the stage of the grand competition. Chapter 689. He is indeed a genius with a big tool. In just half a month, he has shown his talent and shone brightly. In the courtyard of the Immortal 5 area, Wang Lu was reading the latest news in the study, clicking his tongue. In the trading area, the Baldi figurines should be almost out of stock, right? Hai Yunfan, the secretary on the side, replied, the sales are indeed good. During this time, he has won consecutive battles, and with the operation of some people, his popularity has skyrocketed. According to the results of the mysterious Sky Mansion survey, his popularity index can already be ranked in the top 10 of the Wuxia League. Whether it is strength or management ability, it is amazing. Wang Lu said, of course, he will have amazing performance if he can be chosen by Shizhou as a son-in-law. In fact, you haven't seen the most amazing part of him. Hai Yunfan was surprised. Shizhou chose him as a son-in-law. Isn't Luo Xiao a Zen cultivator? Wang Lu sneered, happy Zen, haven't you heard of it? Hai Yunfan naturally heard that this was a joke, but the matter of Shizhou looking for a son-in-law was probably not groundless. Thinking of the little Baldi who was very devout in Zen and had a bitter face when Shizhou dressed him as a groom, he couldn't help but smile and shake his head. If the matter of a son-in-law is true, then he is really lucky. It seems that Shizhou wants to pass on all his life savings to him. It's just that a true gentleman has many children, and there are more than a dozen daughters alone. I wonder which one he is going to marry. Wang Lu smiled, maybe there are many. After all, he has a big tool and a good life. Monogamy can no longer stop him. A big tool and a good life. Wang Lu waved his hand. In short, you don't have to follow Luo Xiao so closely. If he wants to be a star, let him be. Now that Shizhou is endorsing him, there is no need for me to meddle. Is that so? Alright, I'll find someone to place an order for the secret mountain cultivators and have them keep a close eye on them. Wang Lu immediately smiled. Little Hai's secretary was really considerate. Ever since he became the chief planner, there were some things that he couldn't say directly. Even if he had to say it, he had to say it in reverse. At this time, as a secretary, whether or not he could correctly understand the leader's intentions was a test of his skill. And Little Hai's performance rarely disappointed him. Wang Lu nodded. Pay attention to the way you do things. Hai Yunfan sighed. Don't worry, I won't implicate you. Luo Xiao is now the target of public criticism. You're not the only one who has their eyes on him. Even if you're exposed, you can push the blame onto others. Hidden Mountain has received a lot of orders for Luo Xiao. This is the fate of celebrities. Let Shizhou and the others have a headache. Wang Lu shook his head and then put aside all the information about Luo Xiao and shifted his attention to other affairs. Since he reached an agreement with Shizhou half a month ago, Wang Lu had let Luo Xiao do as he pleased. In the past half a month, Luo Xiao had applied for 7 consecutive competitions, all of which were approved by Wang Lu. There were even some competitions where, in order to arrange for Luo Xiao, they did not hesitate to forcibly take the originally determined candidate, which caused a lot of controversy. However, Luo Xiao won again and again. Including the previous 2 competitions, his record of 9 consecutive victories was dazzling and showed his sharpness. Soon, he became a rising star in the City of Immortals. In this regard, Wang Lu was not surprised. Luo Xiao could make Shizhou take him so seriously, so he was not an embroidered pillow. It was inevitable that he had some strength. However, that was all. 9 consecutive victories looked brilliant, even more dazzling than Wang Lu's 5 consecutive victories. However, the difficulty of the 2 could not be mentioned in the same breath. One was to single-handedly turn the tide when the Wuxia League was in full decline, while the other was to pursue victory. Moreover, there was no hard fight in the 9 matches, so the value of the 2 was very different. A large part of the current fame was the credit of hype. Therefore, there was no need to spend too much energy on Luo Xiao. In contrast, the Dixian camp was more worthy of attention. Wang Lu was a person who could distinguish between priorities. His displeasure with Luo Xiao was only a private matter, which could be said to be insignificant in the context of the entire grand competition. It was a good habit of Wang Lu to not abandon the public for personal reasons. Unfortunately, just as Wang Lu turned his eyes away, Luo Xiao was unwilling to be left out. 5 days later, Luo Xiao's 10th match ended. The content of the match was only a minor detail. A victory could only be exchanged for 2 victory points, which could even be described as chicken ribs. However, for Luo Xiao, this was his 10 consecutive victories. 10 consecutive victories, even if the value was slightly insufficient, was still a shocking enough topic. For a time, countless people flocked to Luo Xiao. Even the main newspapers and magazines under the mysterious Sky Mansion sent a special person to interview him. And in the interview, there was an interesting dialogue. Daoist Master Luo Xiao, do you feel surprised by your current achievements? This question was actually a standard free-point question, impression points. Luo Xiao only replied humbly as usual, such as, yes, I didn't expect to play so well. It must be because of everyone's support. I hope I can continue to get everyone's support in the future and make due contributions to the grand competition. However, this time, Luo Xiao chose another answer. Yes, I didn't expect the 10 consecutive victories to be so late. I thought it would be earlier. Unfortunately, the applications for the previous matches were suppressed. Probably, I haven't been able to prove myself at that time. At that time, the reporter who heard this froze for a long time before he realized that Luo Xiao was blatantly targeting Wang Lu. Thus, the reporter immediately threw out more stimulating questions. Presumably, Daoist Master Luo Xiao also knows that your record of 10 consecutive victories has broken the highest record in the grand competition so far. The previous record holder is Daoist Master Wang Lu's 6 consecutive victories. What do you think of this? Luo Xiao said with a smile, this is not a simple comparison of numbers. Daoist Master Wang Lu's result is much higher than mine. However, this is only temporary. The grand competition is only halfway through, and most of the key matches have not yet begun. I think I have enough time to surpass the previous record. When it came to this, his meaning could not be more obvious. In this regard, people marveled at Luo Xiao's amazing feat, but they also marveled at the fact that among the cultivators of this generation, there were people who dared to challenge Wang Lu head-on. Then they began to wonder how Wang Lu would react. As everyone knew, Wang Lu didn't like Luo Xiao from the beginning, and the suppression against him had been a topic of conversation for many people. At this time, Luo Xiao's 10 consecutive victories made his suppression policy very embarrassing. Moreover, today's tit-for-tat seemed to be a reasonable retaliation. Whether Luo Xiao could shake Wang Lu's position or not, what kind of attitude would Wang Lu take in the challenge of this rising star? As everyone knew, Wang Lu never seemed to be a magnanimous person. In the courtyard of Immortal 5 area, Wang Lu looked at the latest report presented by Hai Yunfan and laughed angrily. What a joke! How dare they question my breadth of mind? Now these media reporters really know how to play tricks. If I were really narrow-minded, with my current authority, wouldn't it be easy to shut down and rectify several magazines? It's only because they see my generosity that they dare to jump up and down in front of me. Hai Yunfan had a different opinion on this. I don't think it's so simple. These newspapers and magazines have been promoting Luo Xiao before, and it's obvious that someone is manipulating them. I thought it was Shizhou at first, but after investigating, I found that it was not so. Wang Lu said, it doesn't matter who is manipulating them. What's important is that since they have questioned it, it's not right for me to not give an answer. Little Hai, help me prepare a celebration ceremony in 2 days. Celebration ceremony? Hai Yunfan frowned. To celebrate your several consecutive victories? Wang Lu laughed. Wrong, not to celebrate my consecutive victories, but to celebrate Luo Zhao's 10 consecutive victories. Doesn't he want to be glorious? Then I'll give him glory. 2 days later, the celebration ceremony arranged by Hai Yunfan officially began. The theme was to celebrate Taoist master Luo Zhao's 10 consecutive victories in the grand competition. The organizer was the organizing committee of the grand competition, which had a very high standard. The host was the chief planner and executive elder of the organizing committee, Wang Lu himself. In this regard, there was naturally a heated discussion in the City of Immortals. No matter how one looked at it, Wang Lu's battle array seemed to have an ulterior motive. Perhaps there were 500 axemen lying in ambush at the celebration site, so that they could smash Luo Xiao into minced meat. However, Luo Xiao had to attend this ceremony, because Wang Lu also invited many supremes and deity stage elders of Heavenly Sage Hall, naturally, including Supreme He Tu, who had always supported Wang Lu. It was an unprecedented grand occasion. Even if he knew that the banquet was not a good one, how could Luo Xiao dare to stand up so many elders? Therefore, Luo Xiao finally came. And then he regretted it. At the beginning of the ceremony, he realized that he really shouldn't have come today. Even if he said that he suffered an internal injury in the match a few days ago, it was better than attending such a ceremony. There were no 500 executioners at the ceremony, nor was there any smashing of cups. In fact, Wang Lu did not show any hostility. He just sat on the rostrum with a serious expression and read the report in his hand. The name of the report was, Report on the Advanced Deeds of Taoist Master Luo Xiao. Chapter 690. Fellow Taoists, today we hold this celebration mainly to celebrate Taoist Master Luo Zhao's 10 consecutive victories in the grand competition. On the one hand, we should carefully summarize the successful experience of Taoist Master Luo Xiao. On the other hand, we should take this opportunity to correctly understand the current situation. Finally, based on the advanced experience of Taoist Master Luo Xiao, we should guide the next step of the work and strive for the final victory in the grand competition. Now, I will elaborate on these 3 aspects. First, a report on the advanced deeds of Taoist Master Luo Xiao. 1. Brave to take responsibility and recommend himself to participate in the competition many times. 2. Diligent cultivation and continuous improvement of strength and cultivation base. 3. Wonderful performance and brilliant victory, in the Purple Cloud Hall of Immortal 5 area, at the celebration ceremony of Luo Zhao's 10 consecutive victories. Wang Lu read the manuscript in his hand in a solemn tone. His voice reverberated back and forth in the hall, shocking people. The Purple Cloud Hall was a place for the high-level elders of the Wuxia League to hold meetings in the Immortal 5 area. Not only was the appearance dignified and generous, but the internal facilities were also perfect. The host sat on the rostrum and spoke, and there was an array to spread his voice out. Moreover, in order to ensure the effect of the meeting, the Dixian who built the hall, under the requirements of Wang Lu's drawings, designed the array very tricky. The sound processed by the array reached the people's heart. The sound was loud and deafening. Let alone pretending not to hear it, it was impossible for people to be absent-minded. This most hateful design had now made the people who participated in the ceremony miserable. All of them showed pain in their seats. Their buttocks rubbed from side to side as if they wanted to wear through the futon and the floor under them until a deep pit was drilled in, so that the sound could not be transmitted. It wasn't that everyone wasn't interested in Luo Zhao's glorious deeds. It was just that when Luo Zhao's glorious deeds were narrated by Wang Lu in an official manner, it was even more boring than the 30,000-person group crosstalk at the opening ceremony. It just so happened that Wang Lu had broken up Luo Zhao's affairs in a very detailed way, wishing that he could detail Luo Zhao's life during this period of time, such as the menu for breakfast and lunch, his daily clothes, the books of Zen cultivation, and so on. In fact, if these contents were tabloid gossip, it would certainly make his fans intoxicated, but no tabloid gossip would be written in official style. When everyone finally got through the first stage and began to look forward to Wang Lu's analysis of the current situation of the grand competition. 2. A few views on the current situation. 1. From an internal perspective, a united and progressive competition atmosphere has been formed. First, the various plans of the Wuxia League Organizing Committee have been effectively implemented, specifically in the following aspects. 2. From an external perspective, the killing frenzy of Dixian has been effectively curbed. 3. Overall, at present, opportunities and challenges coexist. The content of these 3 points was clear and organized. The only problem was that it was the same as not saying anything. Everyone looked forward to Wang Lu's analysis of the situation. It was not that they really believed that he had the ability to predict the future, but they valued the large amount of information that he could access from his position. For example, which sect had what elite disciples, which sect had produced a rare and powerful weapon, and so on. Unfortunately, after reading for a whole hour, Wang Lu didn't have even the slightest bit of substance. Instead, he summarized the current situation, but every sentence was watertight, so that no one could find any fault with it. This was indeed a skill. At the end of the second stage, some of the people sitting in the back of the Purple Cloud Hall had already begun to slip away. The people who stayed in the front row watched them leave. It was really painful and regretful. However, soon, the people who stayed stopped their pain and began to look at the rostrum with interest. Because after a long period of nonsense, Wang Lu finally got to the point. The speech was still the same, and every word was still in the official style, but this time, even the cultivators who were not interested in this kind of problem could hear the meaning behind Wang Lu's words. First of all, we must organize all the cultivators to seriously study the exemplary deeds of perfected Luo Xiao. We must set up a special working group with me as the team leader, and all the major sects will send people to participate. During this period, we must organize many study reports, and perfected Luo Xiao will personally talk about his own experience so that more cultivators can benefit. In addition, we must give generous rewards to perfected Luo Xiao and publicize it to attract more cultivators to participate in the competition. As Wang Lu put forward the requirements one by one, Luo Xiao, who was sitting next to him, looked more and more unsightly. If one only looked at the words, there was nothing wrong with Wang Lu's report. Not only did it not lower Luo Xiao's achievements, but it also raised them to a certain extent. The problem was that this report was equivalent to putting Wang Lu himself in a higher position. The special working group was led by Wang Lu himself as the team leader, while Luo Xiao was just an ordinary team member. Moreover, Luo Xiao had to accept his orders and hold many study reports, like a monkey being played by others. The difference in status was obvious at a glance. In fact, the official style itself was already full of cold posture. Indeed, this style, which was born under the advocacy of the vernacular movement of the Union of 10,000 Immortals, was essentially a highly simple and concise text, without superfluous rhetoric, and without unnecessary expression. It was precise and rigorous, and more accurate than the ancient books on cultivation. However, because the official style was too practical, it sacrificed beauty and readability. Nowadays, except for the high and mighty leaders, few people were willing to use such accurate but una-aesthetic words. The fact that Wang Lu used the official style was tantamount to announcing such a fact. No matter how dazzling Luo Xiao was, he was just a soldier, while Wang Lu sat on the rostrum and spoke eloquently. They were both geniuses of this generation, King Pill, but there was an insurmountable gap between the two. Luo Xiao used the momentum of 10 consecutive victories to try to cross this gap to challenge Wang Lu, but now it seemed that he was too hasty. He excitedly issued a challenge, but Wang Lu had no interest in accepting the challenge. At the same time, the elders sitting on the rostrum also observed Luo Zhao's reaction with great interest. They wanted to know how he would deal with this setback, and whether he could recognize the reality and cool down from his overheated state. From their point of view, from the heated discussion about Luo Xiao to Wang Lu's response with this ceremony, the whole thing was a farce. From the beginning to the end, they did not think that there was any problem of two tigers living on the same mountain between Wang Lu and Luo Xiao. They even thought that there was no need to compare the two because they were not equal at all. Only some gossip tabloids would be keen to hype up such a topic, and they constantly speculated who would be superior if the two had the same starting point. It was true that Wang Lu's innate conditions were much better than Luo Zhao's. Whether it was the quality of the spiritual root or the cultivation of the sect, Luo Xiao, who came from the Huayan sect, could not be compared with Wang Lu. There was a huge difference between the two starting points, but it was meaningless to forcibly exclude this gap to talk about who was superior. Otherwise, why would the cultivators of the Wuxia League, who were born after the age of chaos, bother to compete with the Dixian cultivators who were born in the glorious era? Wouldn't it be better to just say that they were born after the age of chaos? If Luo Xiao really wanted to challenge Wang Lu, he must at least be in the same position as him. And Wang Lu's current position relied on countless brilliant victories. From the time he emerged in the exchange meeting between the disciples of the Lingjian school and the 10,000 Arts sect until now, Wang Lu had subverted people's common sense again and again, defeating all the enemies who stood in front of him. Only then did he have the qualification to be looked at by Hichu Daoran, who entrusted him with important tasks despite his mere king pill stage. However, it was only recently that Luo Xiao showed his sharpness. The only record that he could bring out was his 10 consecutive victories in the grand competition. And these 10 consecutive victories were more or less borrowed from Wang Lu. In this case, why would Wang Lu need to accompany Luo Xiao to play the challenger game? As Wang Lu's report gradually came to an end, the expression on Luo Xiao's face constantly changed. From the initial astonishment and even indignation, he gradually calmed down and even showed a gentle smile. Finally, after reading the report, Wang Lu patted Luo Xiao's shoulder as an elder and said, "Continue to work hard, Luo Xiao, we look forward to more wonderful performances from you." One we, one you. The two pronouns drew the line that symbolized different classes. Luo Xiao seemed to have adjusted his state of mind, so he smiled generously and said, "I will not let you down." At this point, the Purple Cloud Hall finally had an atmosphere of joy between the host and the guest. Seeing that Luo Xiao changed so quickly, Wang Lu no longer said anything. He just said softly, "Take care of yourself, young man." Then he no longer paid attention to him. He turned around and announced that today's report session was over, and then there was a wonderful entertainment program. The entertainment program was indeed wonderful. The song and dance performance personally arranged by Taoist Master Miao Yen made the cultivators who were about to get hemorrhoids on the praying mat exclaim in satisfaction and feel that the previous ordeal was worth it. However, several of the protagonists of the ceremony had already left early. Wang Lu was very busy. It was already extremely extravagant for him to spend half a day on the ceremony for Luo Xiao. If he spent more time watching the song and dance performance, it would simply be a dereliction of duty. And Luo Xiao was obviously not in the mood to appreciate the program, so he casually found a reason to leave the Purple Cloud Hall. However, as soon as he walked out of the hall, he was surrounded by a group of bald Zen cultivators. "Senior brother Luo Xiao. Are you all right?" Luo Xiao was startled and found that they were all his fellow disciples in Huayan school. "Why are you here?" A tall bald man couldn't help but say with a smile, "Today is your big day, senior brother, how can we not come?" After saying that, he sighed, "But looking at the ceremony, it seems to be different from what we thought." Another person said, "I heard that senior brother has a conflict with Taoist Master Wang Lu and has been targeted by him. Is that true?" A bald man next to him refuted, "Senior brother Luo Xiao has a straightforward and generous personality. He can be friends with anyone. How could he offend Wang Lu for no reason? I think it's all a rumor. But I just heard an elder in the hall whisper an analysis, saying that Taoist Master Wang Lu's report was targeted at senior brother Luo Xiao." "Senior brother, is that so?" Luo Xiao smiled, "Don't listen to their nonsense. If there was really a conflict, why would Taoist Master Wang Lu hold such a grand ceremony for me? I simply don't deserve it. Senior brother, you're too modest. What's there to feel ashamed about? The result of 10 consecutive victories is now unique. Although those Taoist masters of deity transformation and Taoist masters of unity have high cultivation, I haven't seen anyone who can do what senior brother has done." Luo Xiao pursed his lips and was about to speak, but he heard the excited bald junior brother say again, "Senior brother, Taoist Master Wang Lu held such a grand ceremony for you. Does it mean that he thinks highly of you? He will continue to put you in an important position in the future, right?" Luo Xiao couldn't help but smile bitterly. "I'm now Shizhou disciple, so I don't need Taoist Master King Pill to think highly of me. Taoist Master Wang Lu is not an ordinary King Pill. He can do many things that Taoist masters can't do. With his help, your cultivation path will definitely be much smoother." Luo Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he listened to the junior brothers who were once closest to him excitedly discussing how he would benefit from being valued by Wang Lu in the future. After a long while, when the enthusiasm of the junior brothers' discussion subsided a little, he suddenly said, "If I said that I want to challenge Wang Lu, what would you think?" What responded to him were dozens of extremely shocked eyes. "Senior brother, are you kidding?" Luo Xiao thought for a while, "Do you think it's impossible? He is King Pill, and I am also King Pill. There's no absolute gap between us." The youngest junior brother hesitated and said, "But, he is Wang Lu." "He is Wang Lu, you are not." The words of this junior brother, who had always been known for his outspokenness, really made Luo Xiao depressed. "Sorry for the lack of updates these days, but I will try my best to make up for it in the next few days. Please rest assured, in addition, thank you, Grand Alliance Master, for the New Year's red banner. I wish Grand Alliance Master and the readers a Happy New Year and all the best." Chapter 691. How do you feel? In the City of Immortals, at the station of Four Element Sect, Shizhou looked with interest at the slowly walking Luo Xiao, his newly accepted successor disciple not long ago. At the recent ceremony, he sat next to Luo Xiao, and he also saw Luo Xiao's reaction. The initial anger and unwillingness eventually calmed down, which made Shizhou somewhat gratified. You can't be too hasty in doing things. Now you should understand this more deeply. Shizhou said, "In today's world, when everyone bows down to Wang Lu, you have the courage to challenge his authority, which I admire very much. But courage alone can't do anything, you need more accumulation. However, you don't have to be discouraged because of a setback. Your talent is not under anyone, and your god of war blood is unparalleled. As long as you give it time." Luo Xiao interrupted, "If every time you do something, you can't do anything." When Wang Lu faced the Yuanying stage elder of Beast Master School in Grand Cloud Mountain, he was only in Shudan stage. Did he ever say that he would wait until he reached the same Yuanying stage before fighting him? Moreover, the magical effect of God of War blood is based on locking the target and advancing bravely. Only by facing difficulties can the potential of the bloodline be continuously stimulated. If you are afraid of the opponent's strength and choose to retreat, not only will the God of War blood not be effective, it will also backfire on you. I started as an unknown outer court handyman in Stern Flower School, and after several cross-level challenges, I defeated the lead disciple of the outer court, the lead disciple of the inner court, and the lead disciple of the sect. At that time, regardless of strength, aptitude, or resources, I was far inferior to my opponent. But if I had challenged him several times, I'm afraid I would still be a handyman now. Moreover, if I want to defeat Wang Lu, it's best to do it when my strength is far inferior to him, and I need to challenge him at a higher level. Wang Lu became famous by challenging him at a higher level. If I win in his best field, my god of war blood will truly boil. After listening to Luo Zhao's words, Shi Jiujin frowned and was silent for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, he was interrupted by Luo Zhao again. I know what I just said is a bit whimsical, but I am not Wang Lu. I may not be able to do what he can do. If it were me, who has just entered Shudan stage, no matter what, I would not be able to fight against a Yuanying stage elder of Beast Master School. In the Western continent, it would be even more impossible for me to kill my way out under the pincer attack of many holy ones. His achievements are unimaginable to me, and I know that I'm not as good as him. But the battle god's blood will never change its target. The only thing I need to do now is to keep challenging him until I win. God of War Blood. Shi Jiujin pondered for a moment and said, "This bloodline left behind from the Age of Desolation is extraordinary, but the side effect is too strong. If people repeatedly choose to fight against enemies that are difficult to defeat, it's no wonder that the bloodline eventually becomes extinct. If it can be orderly, step by step." Luo Zhao said, "If it's orderly, step by step, then it would lose the original meaning of the God of War Blood." Shi Jiujin sighed. Therefore, the possessor of the God of War Blood needs a powerful controller to suppress their completely inappropriate challenges, which is a long-term solution. However, how could the possessor of the God of War Blood tolerate being controlled for a long time? Falling out is only a matter of time. Luo Zhao, you should know why I accepted you as my successor disciple. I only regret that I didn't meet you a few years earlier. There were all kinds of rumors about Shi Jiujin making an exception to accept Hua Yen School's meditation cultivator as his own successor disciple. Some said that Shi Jiujin was quite dissatisfied with his own sect's disciples, and especially disgusted with their endless infighting. Therefore, he simply found an outsider to stimulate them to return to the right path. Some also said that Shi Jiujin inherited an ancient immortal world inheritance, but the qualification requirement was too high, so he couldn't find a successor in the entire 9 regions. It just so happened that Luo Zhao had such a qualification. Therefore, Shi Jiujin broke the convention and accepted him as his disciple. Of course, there were also people who speculated that it was because Luo Zhao was handsome, only the master and the disciple knew the truth. Not long ago, when Shi Jiujin and Wang Lu were talking, they didn't say everything. Shi Jiujin favored Luo Zhao not only because he had a big tool, good skills, and unusual talent, but more importantly, because Luo Zhao needed a master like Shi Jiujin. A master who could suppress him, support him, and completely not care about betrayal in the future. Luo Zhao was silent for a while, and then said, "I will never forget Master's great kindness. I don't need you to remember my kindness, I only need you to fulfill your obligation to inherit. The God of War Blood has been extinct for more than 100,000 years since the Great Desolate Era. Although I don't know why it awakened in you, I hope it can continue to multiply." As Shi Jiujin spoke, his eyes couldn't help but look at the space between Luo Zhao's legs, his face showing approval. Luo Zhao instantly felt his legs tighten, and said awkwardly, "Master, although I've already left the Flower Stern sect, I'm still a Dhyana cultivator." Shi Jiujin said disapprovingly, "What's wrong with Dhyana cultivators? Isn't the joyous Dhyana also Dhyana?" The Flower Stern sect doesn't practice the joyous Dhyana. The Flower Stern sect has never practiced the Dhyana of the God of War Blood. 90% of your abilities come from this mysterious Great Desolate Era bloodline. What can the Flower Stern sect teach you? Even your core cultivation method was improved by yourself, do you think I can't see it? If you really have any Diana in your heart, you should learn from those real baldies and stand aloof from worldly affairs. Why compete with Wang Lu? And now everyone calls you spiritual master Luo Xiao, how many call you Diana master? I've accepted you as my direct disciple for a long time, but I've never heard you mention your Dharma name in the Flower Stern sect. Before Shizhou finished, Luo Xiao knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Master, I understand. I'll listen to your arrangements. Very good. Shizhou nodded happily. I'll help you find 100 girls in the next few days. Wait, 100? That's too. Shizhou said seriously, your bloodline is too rare. How to awaken it and how to inherit it are all unknown. Now you can only win by quantity. Winning by quantity is too impatient, isn't it? If there's enough time, you can study it slowly. But your god of war blood has locked onto Wang Lu, and you have to challenge him. You can't advance step by step, so you can only advance bravely. You don't know when your bloodline will backfire. There's not much time left for you and your bloodline to reproduce. Luo Xiao was tongue-tied. He didn't expect that his long speech just now had become digging his own grave. You can also use this as an excuse to cancel the report of your outstanding deeds. I believe you have no interest in reading the report like a puppet, right? Luo Xiao swallowed his saliva. No, but in terms of reproduction, 100 people is too. Shizhou snorted coldly. Doesn't the god of war blood require you to be the first in everything? I think Wang Lu's yang energy is very strong. Not to mention 100 people, he can even have 1,000 or 10,000 people. Are you going to admit defeat in this aspect? Are you still a man? Luo Xiao was shocked. I heard that although Zhenren Wang Lu has a lot of female friends, he is not licentious. Shizhou snort turned into a sneer. Do you think he needs to inform you that he is licentious? Zhenren Wang Lu is now the signature figure of the Wuxia League, a role model for tens of thousands of people. How can there be rumors of him being licentious? Luo Xiao said in disbelief. Master, you mean, Zhenren Wang Lu looks decent on the surface, but behind his back he is actually. No, when I was in contact with him, I couldn't feel it at all. Shizhou continued to sneer. If even you can see through it, what qualifications does he have to stand side by side with so many deity transformation Zhenren and unity stage Zhenren and become the top figure of the Wuxia League today? Luo Xiao only felt that his mind was in a mess. He couldn't believe that Wang Lu was a lustful person. It wasn't that he had a good impression of Wang Lu, but objectively speaking, Wang Lu had never shown much interest in women. It was not a problem for him to have a few female friends, but things like beheading thousands of people and beheading tens of thousands of people were just wishful thinking. But on the other hand, Shizhou had never been a person who liked to talk nonsense. With his identity, he shouldn't deliberately come up with such a ridiculous lie to deceive him. At the end of the day, the two of them were still master and disciple, and he was also sincere to him. If he asked him to do a good job of reproduction as his master, he couldn't object, probably. Of course, Luo Xiao didn't think that Shizhou really didn't like to talk nonsense, but that was only because there was no need to. When it was necessary, for the sake of the great undertaking, he never cared about personal face. Okay, I got it. Master, please arrange it. I will try my best. Shizhou was very pleased. Not bad, not bad. Luo Xiao, you really understand the truth. You are much better than those good-for-nothings in my sect. It was not in vain that I pressured the elders to accept you as my true disciple. Master, you flatter me. As Shizhou said this, he turned around and took out a soup bowl with a lid from his mustard seed bag. This is? Shizhou looked kind and smiled kindly. This is a medicinal soup that I personally brewed to nourish the body. I prepared it a long time ago, but I never had the chance to give it to people. What a pity. Luo Xiao silently took the old soup bowl. Although he knew that the Supreme's mustard seed bag had the function of keeping fresh, and even if it was stored for thousands of years, there wouldn't be any change. In fact, the soup bowl was still warm in his hand. Luo Xiao still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. But in the next moment, when he opened the lid, the discomfort from before could be ignored. Luo Xiao fell into a great shock that shook his immortal heart. Looking at the countless rod-shaped objects floating in the soup bowl, Luo Xiao only felt his throat dry and his eyes dazzled. He reached out to touch one of them and stammered, this is. Shizhou glanced at it and casually explained, tiger penis. Tiger penis? Then the one next to it is dog penis. The one next to it is sheep penis. Don't worry, they are all spiritual species raised by spiritual plants. They are definitely not ordinary. Apart from these common ones, there are also other whips of spiritual beasts and monsters. For example, this is the full moon roaring whip, that is the four-winged fox whip, and the one that looks smaller, is actually. Wait, there is no need to explain in detail. I just want to ask, what exactly is this soup? This medicinal soup is a unique creation of mine. It is specially used to strengthen the inheritance and reproduction ability. There should be no precedent in the world, so there is no name. But since you asked. Shizhou stroked his beard, thought for a moment, and then decided. Let's call it 100 whip soup. Chapter 692. Boss Shu, we have brought this week's goods. In front of a bustling shop in the City of Immortals, a fat middle-aged businessman bent over and rubbed his hands. He looked at the teenager in front of him with a flattering look. Beads of sweat continued to ooze from his forehead, but he did not dare to wipe them. The teenager in front of the businessman glanced at him lightly, then turned his eyes to the carriage behind the businessman and could not help but smile. Master Tan, the weekly supply we agreed on should be more than this, right? The businessman hurriedly complained, Boss Shu, you don't know, I also have my own difficulties. Recently, the teenager waved his hand and said, don't say it, it's useless to say it. I don't need to know what difficulties you have. As a businessman, you can have difficulties at any time. I just want to ask, what if what you do is different from what you say? There was more cold sweat on Master Tan's face, but he couldn't speak. I'm just a newcomer on this street, and as a senior, Master Tan should know better than me that the most important thing in a businessman's business is integrity. The teenager with a particularly tender face unceremoniously scolded the businessman who was several times older than him, which soon attracted onlookers on the street. The fat face of the fat businessman, Master Tan, turned red and purple. Obviously, he was extremely ashamed and angry, but he didn't even have the courage to look up at the other party. He could only sigh inwardly that in this City of Immortals, the new generation really surpassed the old. As the teenager said, he was just a newcomer. Not to mention in this street, he was also a newcomer in the entire business circle. He had only been in the business for a few months at most. Even 3 months ago, his shop was still in a remote corner of the City of Immortals. But now, he had gained a foothold in the bustling street and even had the courage to scold him. The reason was very simple, he was stronger than him. The world of businessmen was the same as that of cultivators. They also paid attention to strength. It was just that the strength of cultivators was reflected in cultivation, while the strength of businessmen was reflected in money. This teenager was richer than him, and he also controlled his money-making lifeline. Thus, no matter how rude he was to him, he could only endure it. How could a businessman who had been in the business for a few months be more powerful than Master Tan who had been in business for decades? It was very simple. Because more than a month ago, the businessmen in the City of Immortals set up a huge gambling house. In that game, some people won and some people lost. The winner moved from a remote small shop to a bustling central street, while the loser had to endure the shame of being rude. The source of the gambling house came from the huge divergence of the businessmen in the City of Immortals in predicting the future. The source of the gambling house was the huge divergence of the merchants in the City of Immortals. At that time, it was the most difficult time for the union of 10,000 immortals in the grand competition. Those who could previously call the wind and summon the rain were silent, such as Daoist He-Tu, Daoist Master Non-Phase, and the others. They had no desire to come forward to reverse the situation. Coupled with the fanning of heavenly book building and other sects, the confidence of many people below them was greatly shaken. The merchants from Tian 999 sect. And 99 Zhou, of IMS. Of 9 of sect of me of him. Of him of Chen of sect. However, everyone had different opinions. Some people still had confidence in the Wuxia League, while others felt that the momentum was gone. The largest and most powerful mysterious sky mansion, because of the struggle in the upper class, maintained a neutral stance in this debate, which completely failed to resolve the differences. Thus, the differences led to contradictions, and contradictions led to wars. The war of the merchants would not be a bloodbath, but it was equally tragic. In short, Master Tan, who had a deep foundation among the merchants, for various reasons, chose the pessimistic side. And then, together with many of his peers, he completely fell. Hundreds of years of accumulation and decades of hard work were all turned into running water. Of course, Master Tan was a little luckier than most of his peers. At least he could still survive, while many of his peers had been exposed in the wilderness, which harmed their families. Boss Shu, please give me one more week. Right now, I really can't come up with the goods. The conversation at the door didn't last long. A large carriage blocked the door, and the business of the shop could not continue. In the end, Boss Shu didn't force Master Tan to his death. It was just that after muddling through this obstacle, Master Tan seemed to have shed a few layers of skin. In his heart, he just cursed that this young man from the marketplace was much more ruthless than many of the older seniors. After experiencing a defeat, he had little capital left, but he still had the possibility of making a comeback. However, if he let this young man exploit him a few more times, perhaps he wouldn't be able to make a comeback in this life. On the other side, the young man who returned to the shop said a few words to the shop assistant and then entered the backyard. As soon as he entered the door, he put down his dignified expression and shouted at a proud and aloof figure under the shade of a tree in the backyard. "Huh, dead face, did you see that just now? Just now, I, your father, released my domineering aura and easily beheaded that dead face." Before he finished speaking, a cold voice interrupted him, a monkey wearing a crown, a fox assuming the tiger's might. "Huh, dead face, you are jealous that I have a cheerful personality. I can preside over the work outside, while you, a gloomy person, can only stay alone." Humph. Dead face coldly humphed, and the temperature of the whole backyard plummeted. Shu Si shivered and quickly stopped talking. After getting along with Dead Face for a few months, he had figured out his temper. Don't look at his usually gloomy face. It didn't matter if he occasionally flirted with him. However, when he coldly humphed, it meant that he was impatient and must stop before going too far. Moreover, from the bottom of his heart, Shu Si actually respected him very much. In just a few months, he had changed from a penniless street punk to a cultivator who officially embarked on the path of immortal cultivation, as well as a hot big boss in the City of Immortals. Of course, this was not because of his own ability. More than a month ago, the big gambling in the City of Immortals reversed the fate of many people. However, at that time, Shu Si was not qualified to participate in the gambling. His small shop business was booming, but it was still not on the table. It was Dead Face who inexplicably took out a bunch of property deeds and several sealed mustard seed bags. He asked Shu Si to join the gambling and bet heavily on the reversal of the Wuxia League. At that time, Xu Si wanted to say that with just a few pieces of broken paper and a few broken bags in his hands, those local tycoons, who were as rich as a country, would not put them in their eyes. Moreover, the gambling was very meticulous. It was not like comparing the size of a casino, so how could he join just by saying a few words? However, when he really found someone with those things, he was immediately treated solemnly. Not only did he see a large circle of high-level big shots, but someone enthusiastically sent him a large stack of documents, all of which were related to the gambling. Xu Si signed all of them in confusion. Then, he found that as time went by, the property under his name increased. More and more property deeds were sent to him. Occasionally, some ashen-faced businessmen ran to him and knelt down to beg for mercy. Until today, Xu Si actually didn't know how the gambling was carried out. When he mingled in the marketplace, the so-called gambling was nothing more than shaking the dice and playing pai gao. How could it be so complicated and high-end? However, Xu Si was also clever. He didn't think too much about things that he couldn't understand. Anyway, it was Dead Face who did it. If there was a problem, of course, he would be the one to bear it. He just had to let nature take its course. With cultivation and wealth, what more could he ask for in life? Speaking of which, Dead Face, I don't understand. Not long ago, we just made a lot of money with that Luo Xiao. Why did you suddenly change the requirements and withdraw all the projects related to him? This change is too sudden. That Tan guy was almost forced to death by you. Dead Face didn't turn his head, just do it. Of course, I will do it, but at least explain it to me. Am I not your disciple now? Dead Face coldly said, hee hee. Xu Si knew that the other party was using concise and clear words to say, your IQ is not enough to understand too complicated a problem. He suddenly felt helpless. Although he had entered Dead Face's sect, he didn't know the name of this sect. Dead Face was very attentive when guiding him in cultivation, but he didn't care about anything other than cultivation. Moreover, his cultivation method was quite strange. It seemed to focus on hiding his tracks, which made him seem sneaky and sneaky. Of course, Xu Si, who was born in the marketplace, didn't care too much about that. Although he also dreamed of flying on a flying sword, just like immortal Wang Lu who gave him an immortal fate, he always had to understand reality. Just as Xu Si was thinking about it, Dead Face spoke again. Luo Zhao's value ends here. It's not worth continuing to invest in him. It was rare that Dead Face was willing to explain. Xu Si quickly raised his spirits and asked, even if you don't think highly of him, at least give him some buffer time. Now, in addition to that Tan guy, there are several merchants who are complaining to me, Dead Face said, it's too late to get rid of him. Now, there are many people who see that Luo Zhao's value has been exhausted. It's just that it's difficult to get rid of him for a while, and they still have a fluke mentality, hoping that he can hold on for a while. But when they realize that the situation is irreversible, they will get rid of him even if they have to cut their own flesh. At that time, the situation you have to face will not be as simple as listening to people's complaints. After hearing this, Xu Si suddenly showed a look of excitement. Dead Face, what happened to you today? Why are you so naggy? What's going on with that Luo Xiao? Wasn't the celebration hosted by immortal Wang Lu a few days ago? I heard many people say that Luo Xiao will have a promising future. Dead Face sneered, if there was no Wang Lu celebration, I wouldn't dare to conclude that Luo Zhao's value has been exhausted. After all, although he overestimated himself, his strength is still good and can be used as a useful chess piece. But now it seems that Wang Lu doesn't care about this chess piece and doesn't have the patience to play with him. Xu Si was confused, but he still accurately grasped one point. Do you think Wang Lu doesn't like Luo Xiao? Dead Face didn't answer, but said, next, tell your people to pay attention to Luo Zhao's movements and inform me in time. Xu Si curiously asked, "Didn't you say that all the projects related to him will be stopped?" However, Dead-Face turned his back and focused on reading a book in his hand, no longer paying attention to Xu Si. Chapter 693. Recently, that silly Luo Xiao has been quite quiet, which makes people a bit bored. In the Immortal 5 area, it was still that quiet courtyard. Wang Lu put down the writing brush in his hand and looked like he wanted to continue. As his secretary, Hai Yunfan had to remind him, "Wang Lu, now there are more than 100 people working overtime with you. Don't take the lead in slacking off." Wang Lu sneered and said, "More than 100 people working overtime still need me, the boss, to be busy, which can only mean that they are incompetent. According to the principle of survival of the fittest, they should all be fired. In order to keep their jobs, I have to take a break from my busy schedule to slack off." Hai Yunfan suddenly wanted to throw the writing brush away. Wang Lu, this single bird man, was living in the office anyway, so it didn't matter if he worked overtime and got hemorrhoids. However, he had a wife. During this time, he had been working overtime with Wang Lu every day, so Feifei had already complained a little. However, if he told the truth, Wang Lu would definitely suggest that he find a few strong men to comfort Feifei. This slut had always been vicious to married people. After thinking about it, Hai Yunfan said, "You look more and more like your master now." Wang Lu immediately threw the writing brush away and said, "Who is like that slut? I, your father, have worked hard for the Wuxia League and can be called a model for the world, a teacher for all ages. Don't have eyes but fail to recognize Mount Tai. Mount Tai, please don't slack off. This deity stage team fight will start in 5 days, but the plan is only half done, it's really." Wang Lu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I will definitely finish it before the fight starts. You just have to make sure that the details of the deductions made by those who work overtime outside the room are not wrong." Hai Yunfan sighed and said, "Those who work overtime are the elite forces of the major sects who are good at deduction, and they have been reviewed many times, so there will be no mistakes. The problem is that your deadline can't be stuck on the day before the fight. When the plan is made, you should at least give people time to adapt, right? This is the most important game since the start of the grand competition. Even the head of your Lingjian school is going to take action. You should at least be more professional." Wang Lu said, "It's because of my professionalism that I've been so meticulous with the proposal. Otherwise, I could have just written a 3-word mantra and done with it. I could have finished the draft 10 days ago." Hai Yunfan was slightly curious. 3-syllable Sanskrit mantra? Go 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 go. Help, help, help. Disperse, disperse, disperse. F***CK. F***CK. How about it? Was it concise and comprehensive? Did it effectively cover all the possible situations in a team battle? Hai Yunfan sighed and ignored Wang Lu, concentrating on the matters at hand. After Wang Lu had his fill of fishing, he began to draft a battle plan. 5 days later, the 5-person team battle of deity stage would officially start in the Immortal 1 area. This was the highest standard fight in the past few months, so there was no room for mistakes. The candidates for the battle had long been determined. The sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect, Feng Yin Daoist Master, would lead the team. The other 4 super sects would each send 1 person, and then carefully selected 5 substitutes to form a team of 10 people. In terms of individual strength, this team of 10 people could basically represent the highest level of the Wuxia League. It was extremely difficult to further strengthen it. Therefore, if they wanted to improve their odds of winning, they had to work hard on the pre-battle preparation. This would also be the first time since the start of the Wuxia League that they would really go all out. The cheerleading plan, which was previously regarded as a joke by many people, was officially ready to be implemented. The pill furnace rooms of the major sects had been operating at full capacity in the past few days. Secret medicine, immortal medicine, and even forbidden medicine had been continuously refined. Xingjing's sect had opened their treasure house and allowed the contestants to borrow their magical treasures. Basically, everything that could be done had been done to the extreme. Only Wang Lu's battle plan had not yet come out, which really made many people anxious. However, people also knew the importance of this plan, so it was inevitable that Wang Lu's work would be slow. The burden was too heavy. This group of Taoist masters of deity stage was famous in 9 regions, but in the grand competition, they were not as good as those King Pill. In the King Pill, there were at least heaven-defying talents like Wang Wu and Wang Lu. Among the deity stage cultivators, perhaps only Feng Yin had a chance of winning in a one-on-one fight. The rest of them were simply unable to compete with Dixian. And this gap would be more obvious in the team battle. Dixian had joined forces to resist the fallen immortals, so what kind of situation had they not seen? What kind of dangerous situation had they not experienced? Their team cooperation was by no means comparable to the temporary team of the Wuxia League. If the individual strength and team cooperation were not as good as the opponent, how could they fight this battle? In fact, everyone had thought about this problem, but no one had thought about the result. Wang Lu said that he probably had a way, which made people even more amazed, so they threw the burden to him. Fighting for a glimmer of hope in the impossible was what Wang Lu had to do now. After no one knew how long, when Hai Yunfan began to feel dizzy, there came the sound of a pen hitting the table. Turning his head, he saw Wang Lu put down the pen in his hand with a relieved look, which made Hai Yunfan quite surprised. "Is it done? The second half seems to be going very well." Wang Lu nodded and said, "Yes, I thought of a way to cut through the Gordian knot." Cut through the Gordian knot? Hai Yunfan was pleasantly surprised at first, but then he suddenly had an ominous premonition. He had been with Wang Lu for a long time, so he felt that if he said such a thing, it would definitely not be the result he wanted. Sure enough, the next moment, Wang Lu's words made Hai Yunfan's chest feel stuffy, and his blood and qi surged. "I've decided to overturn the previous plan and redo it." With that, Wang Lu burned the most critical pages in his hand. Hai Yunfan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He forcibly operated his cultivation method and used his magical power that was close to True Yuan to move his blood and qi so that he didn't vomit blood. Wang Lu explained, "I just calculated it myself. According to the normal method, no matter how I calculate, the chance of winning is 0. Seeing that Hai Yunfan was still angry, Wang Lu had to continue to explain, "Deduction is not omnipotent. Even if your family's supreme Tian Luan calculated, it's impossible for a mortal to win against Hichu. Now we are facing a similar situation. The strength gap is too big to be made up by deduction. What's more, it's not like the other side doesn't have the ability to calculate. Xuan Xian's calculation ability is stronger than Supreme Tian Luan's, and of course, much stronger than mine. His only weakness is that he can't calculate me, but if I don't fight in this battle, his interference will be much less." Hai Yunfan said, "We have known about these situations for a long time. But you didn't choose to give up before, and you said that although the situation is difficult, there is still a chance of winning. That's why so many of us are willing to help you. Why do you suddenly give up now?" Wang Lu said, "I thought there was a glimmer of hope before because the group of overtime workers outside miscalculated." "What?" Wang Lu waved his hand and pulled out a few pieces of paper full of calculations. "This is the calculation report about the effect of the Soaring Dragon Array. It tells me that there are 17 spells that can achieve a 5-fold effect in the Soaring Dragon Array. Based on this, I designed a set of serial killing array. If I'm lucky, I can instantly kill one of the opponents. Then there's a chance to fight 5 against 4. However, the five-fold effect of the soaring dragon array is really amazing, so I have some doubts. However, the soaring dragon array is a secret of Royal Soldier Sect, and the core formula has not been made public. At that time, I was busy calculating other things, so I had to believe it for the time being. However, later on, no matter how I think about it, I felt that it was wrong. After reading this calculation several times, I finally determined that the idiot of Royal Soldier Sect must have made a mistake when providing the core formula, and a certain key value was miscalculated by 10 times. The actual result is not even 5 times, it's already very good to have a twofold increase. Upon hearing this, Xiaofan was stunned. He quickly grabbed the calculation paper and carefully reviewed it. After a long time, he was still confused. Wang Lu contemptuously took back the calculation paper. Is this the elite talent of 10,000 art sect? Xiaofan coughed and said, I'm a secretary, not a calculator. In short, do you think the people of Royal Soldier Sect gave you the wrong data? Wang Lu said, it should not be intentional. Royal Soldier Sect is not good at fine calculation. The soaring dragon array is an ancient array. I'm afraid no one has ever asked them to refine and digitize the various effects of the array before. However, this time, the construction period is tight, so some mistakes are inevitable. I think the several overtime workers of Royal Soldier Sect have tried their best, and Xiang Liang personally came to supervise the work, which is also full of sincerity. It's really that the intelligence of the barbarians is limited. Xiaofan said. Isn't your sect's discrimination too blatant? How could there be discrimination? I treat everyone equally. In front of you, a disciple of 10,000 art sect, I criticize the intelligence of Royal Soldier Sect. In front of the disciples of Royal Soldier Sect, I will also ridicule the disciples of 10,000 art sect as sissies. What the? You treat everyone equally? Xiaofan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but soon, he really couldn't laugh anymore. Wang Lu, now that the plan is invalid, do you want to give up on this match? Wang Lu said, of course not. There are so many people watching. If I say that the calculation is wrong, the plan will be invalid. Not to mention that my reputation will be ruined. What about the previous reimbursement? Xiaofan asked in surprise, you choose not to give up because of this reason? Wait a minute, what's with the reimbursement? I don't know about it at all. Wang Lu said, of course, I can't let you know without going through the formal process. In short, don't worry, I will come up with an alternative plan as soon as possible. Xiaofan asked. What about those people outside? Let them disperse? Of course not. There's no need for a third person to know that the original plan is invalid except for you. Nowadays, people's psychological quality is generally poor. If they know more, I'm afraid that there will be some bullshit like the heavenly book building. What's more, the new plan also needs coolies to help with the calculation. Let them continue to stick to their posts and serve the Wuxia League. Xiaofan sighed. He wanted to ignore Wang Lu and continue to work, but he didn't know how he could work on a plan that had already been scrapped. He wanted to go home to find his wife, but he also felt that it was a bit irresponsible to leave more than 100 colleagues behind. Seeing him depressed, Wang Lu said with a smile, I'll give you a difficult mission. The new plan can be used. Xiaofan said, what? Help me prepare the compensation plan for the deceased in advance. I want it for all 10 people. Compensation plan? Xiaofan was stunned. You mean, you don't think that no one will die in this team fight, do you? Wang Lu's voice was clear and cold. Even if Royal Soldier Sect didn't make that idiotic mistake and my plan was perfectly executed, at least 2 of the 5 people would die in the end. With the new plan, it wouldn't be surprising even if the team was wiped out. I know that a Taoist master of deity stage usually has a means of resurrection, but can you guarantee that those means will be effective in the arena? Hearing this, Hai Yunfan suddenly raised a question. Why not? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was also startled, and then he tightly frowned. Yeah, why can't it work? Chapter 694. Hai Yunfan never thought that his casual question would cause a chain reaction. At that time, when he heard Wang Lu's serious words that the 5 Taoist masters of deity stage were in danger of being wiped out, he wondered why Wang Lu had such a basis. At deity stage, it was very difficult for a cultivator to die unless they courted death themselves, such as resisting the divine tribulation or running to the extremely cold netherworld. Otherwise, even if the body was shattered and the primordial spirit was shaken, there was a way to recover. As for the deity stage elites who were selected to represent the Wuxia League, there were quite a few of them who had tasted the taste of divine tribulation. If these cultivators wholeheartedly wanted to save their lives, even a supreme of unity stage would find it difficult to destroy their body and soul. Unless it was like Dixian Xian Mo, who directly used the great immortal technique of yin and yang division, which might catch them off guard and disintegrate them in an instant. Otherwise, they could escape with their lives. Unless the other party deliberately targeted these means of resurrection and forcibly prevented them from escaping. For Dixian, it was not difficult to kill people on purpose. At the beginning of the grand competition, under the instruction of Black, in order to kill the Wuxia League, Dixian really made a ruthless move. They killed many cultivators of the Wuxia League in the arena, which really lowered the morale of the Wuxia League a lot. Later, Wang Lu fought tit for tat and killed Little Poison Immortal and Ravenous Wolf in the King Pill fight, which made Dixian restrain themselves a bit. After that, there were few major casualties in the fighting department. On the one hand, Dixian no longer deliberately killed people. On the other hand, the people of the Wuxia League continued to strengthen their life-saving measures. In theory, there was indeed a risk in this deity stage group fight. The battlefield was no longer a simple one-on-one situation. Under extreme conditions, they might be surrounded by people, forming a 1-on-5 situation. At that time, a little carelessness would lead to the destruction of body and soul. However, that was based on the premise that Dixian showed no mercy and deliberately killed people. According to the current situation, the Dixian might not be so happy to kill people. Wang Lu had already killed 2 of those who loved to kill the most. That was why Hai Yunfan found it strange. Why did Wang Lu want this team battle to be so tragic? Could it be that his battle plan was for the 5 of them to advance as a group and force the other party to join them? Then, when the battle started, everyone would self-destruct at the same time and perish together? This kind of extreme combat plan was actually put forward in the beginning. The barbarians of Royal Soldier sect thought so. Moreover, at that time, the person who took the lead to work overtime outside to provide the plan also shouted the extremely high-end slogan, "For victory and glory, what's a mere life worth mentioning? If you sissies don't dare to go, our Royal Soldier sect will send 5 Taoist masters of deity stage." Well, although Royal Soldier sect was also one of the 5 uniques of the Wuxia League, and in terms of pure combat power, they were only under Xingjing sect, but 5 deity stage cultivators were not something that could be casually thrown away. Upon hearing this, Hai Yunfan was simply amazed by Royal Soldier sect. However, later on, when he took a closer look, he saw that the person who took the lead to shout was holding a bottle of Royal Soldier sect specialty liquor, Ford Fine Wine. His whole face was flushed and he shook his head. Drunken cultivators of Royal Soldier sect always had the reputation of being possessed by a true immortal. As long as they were drunk, they were not afraid of the heaven or the earth. They even dared to blow the astral wind of the 9th heaven. As for whether their body would be blown to pieces or their primordial spirit would scatter, that would be seen when the time came. Every year, there would be cultivators of royal soldier sect who died because they were drunk. However, they never changed and even took pride in it. So much so that the current lead disciple, Xiang Liang, was criticized by many cultivators in the mountain for losing the soul of royal soldier sect because he didn't drink a drop of wine. Seeing the plan put forward by the cultivator who had the soul of royal soldier sect, Hai Yunfan was both angry and amused at the same time. He made up a lie to fool the drunken overtime man, and the plan was not reported to Wang Lu at all. Wang Lu was indeed a busy man, so as his secretary, he didn't have to waste his time by giving him this unreliable plan. But now, it seemed that the person of royal soldier sect refused to give up and directly reported it to Wang Lu. That shouldn't be the case. Even if the people of royal soldier sect were not sensible, they had no way to see Wang Lu directly. Or was it that he misunderstood? Wang Lu wasn't thinking of a crazy self-explosion tactic, but was really worried that Dixian would be ruthless. But, was it really necessary? Unlike King Pil Yuanying, a deity stage cultivator was already quite a high-level fighting force. In the face of the fallen immortals, they could more or less act as cannon fodder, so they should not be wasted on internal friction. If they could realize this, they really didn't need to kill them now. Unfortunately, Wang Lu didn't speak. He just frowned and pondered. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the desk, which made Hai Yunfan upset. Just when he couldn't help but ask, Wang Lu explained, "It's not about this time, I'm thinking about the past." The past? Hai Yunfan was confused. The past? Are you thinking about your old lover? Another confused voice came in. On the spot, Wang Lu brought out the immortal sword Rouge Tears and struck it in the direction of the voice. The sword momentum was so fierce that Hai Yunfan subconsciously took a few steps back. However, the fierce sword momentum came to an abrupt stop. The sharp tip of Rouge Tears was gently pinched by two white and tender fingers, and it could no longer move forward even half a step. Then, a furious voice rang out. "Wang Lu, are you really going to rebel? What did I do wrong, and you hit me?" Wang Lu slowly took back the Rouge Tears and said, "Just an advance. You're going to get into trouble sooner or later anyway. What the hell, you can even advance this? Don't you have any shame?" While cursing, Wang Wu unceremoniously leaned over to look at the document on Wang Lu's desk. After a few glances, she raised her eyebrows and said, "Deity Stage Team Battle Plan? What's so difficult about that? Just find a few idiots from Royal Soldier Sect, give each of them a bottle of Ford wine, get them drunk, and then let them go to Dixian to blow themselves up." Hai Yunfan simply prostrated himself before this pair of master and disciple, especially Taoist master of non-phase, who was simply a peerless exotic flower that only appeared once in tens of thousands of years, no, hundreds of thousands of years in 9 regions. It was really amazing that Wang Lu could actually reach this step under her torture. Just as he was thinking, he heard Wang Lu say, "What if they fail to blow themselves up? The attention of this competition is too high, so there's no need to take this risk. Later, when the opportunity is more appropriate, I'll let the people of Royal Soldier Sect be human bombs." Wang Wu excitedly said, "Remember to tell me in advance, I'll go to the black market to bet." Hai Yunfan couldn't bear it anymore, so he got up and said goodbye. "There's an emergency at home, I'll leave first." Wang Lu pointed at Hai Yunfan's receding back and sighed to Wang Wu, "See, this is the working atmosphere of our organizing committee's overtime team. A dignified disciple of 10,000 Art Sect works overtime until he's hungry and thirsty. He can't even take care of his work and wants to go home to find his wife to vent his lust." As soon as his voice fell, Hai Yunfan, who was halfway in front, came back with a livid face. He sat down at the secretary's desk and silently began to deal with official business. Wang Lu smiled and no longer flirted with his secretary. Instead, he sternly asked Wang Wu, "What are you doing here? Seeing if you need any help here." In the past few days, I was caught wandering around the City of Immortals by Senior Brother Sect Leader. He said that since I have time to slack, I might as well help you. So, I came here to freeload. Tell me, when do you have a meal here? I'm hungry. While urging for treatment, Wang Wu seriously looked at the newly written material in front of Wang Lu. With just a glance, she smiled and said, "The original plan is scrapped? You've started anew?" But, looking at your handwriting, it stopped abruptly. What difficult problem did you encounter? Tell me about it. Just give me 10,000 spirit stones to solve a problem. The nearby Xiaofan could not help but open his mouth wide. This pair of master and disciple was too close. This kind of tacit understanding based on mutual insult and even killing was simply unheard of. These two people were really familiar with each other as if they were one person. No, they even knew each other better than each other. It was just like, however, before he could think too much, the dialogue between the master and disciple had gone deeper. Wang Lu said, "I did encounter a problem. In fact, it's a problem that I've been puzzled about since the start of the grand competition. Why did that group of Dixian kill so fiercely in the beginning?" Wang Wu sneered and said, "Nonsense, we're not the parents of Dixian, so why should we be soft when we kill them?" Wang Lu shook his head and said, "Even if they're really parents, if there's a dispute of interest, it doesn't prevent them from killing them. The problem is, we and the Dixian, in general, cooperate more than compete, mutually beneficial than mutually damaging. We have a common enemy. This grand competition is to better integrate the strength of all people and calm disputes, so we came up with a plan." Wang Wu said, "What do you think is the significance of this kind of principle? Then why did they agree to it? The bet between you and Bai Zhe is just one aspect. If the Dixian really want to veto it, they can also do it shamelessly. But in the end, they agreed." Wang Wu asked, "Then what do you want to say?" "Agreeing to compete with you is for the sake of the overall situation. In the competition, in order to win quickly, they used some ruthless means. They cut the Gordian knot and quickly deterred the opponent, which could reduce each other's losses. What's wrong with this?" Wang Lu said, "There's nothing wrong with it, so I haven't thought too much about it. But I just suddenly had an idea. Why didn't the Dixian use the opposite means? For example, when they kill people, they can deliberately let them go to show magnanimity." Wang Wu asked with a smile, "What's the benefit of being magnanimous?" Wang Lu sternly said, "The benefit is that I won't go all out." "That's a good reason." "Indeed, it's a bit strange. The person in charge of the Dixian side is a man in black, not the brainless Bai Zhe. It stands to reason that they shouldn't be so ruthless." Wang Lu said, "I think even Bai Zhe might not be able to make that decision. Killing to deter the opponent is right in theory, but it's actually a crazy method that can easily lead to unpredictable side effects." Wang Wu said, "Yes, the risk is a bit big. There is no unwarranted risk in the world. There should be other benefits for them to do this." For example, what other secrets are there in the City of Immortals? When it came to this, Wang Wu's eyes began to shine. Wang Lu knew what she was thinking without looking at it. You should give up the idea of being a treasure snatcher as soon as possible. This is the hometown of the Dixian. Be careful that you don't steal the treasure and get caught to be trained. The master and disciple seriously exchanged their opinions. Wang Wu was relatively careless, but she still guided Wang Lu's thoughts step by step. Xiaofan was listening at the side. His mind was also racing. When he heard this, he interrupted. "These are just your speculations. Do you have any real data?" Wang Lu said, "Of course not. Otherwise, it would not be speculation, but a statement of fact. The problem is that the Wuxia League and the Dixian are now in a hostile relationship. The two sides are on guard against each other, so the information is very scarce. Where do you want me to find real data? Wang Wu suddenly said, isn't it easy to find real data? Just ask someone. Ask who? Who in the City of Immortals knows more about the Dixian than I do? Wang Wu said, Xian Mo, doesn't she have a good relationship with you? If you have a question, just go straight to her door and ask her. If you can find out a man or a woman, our Wanxian League camp will be unprecedentedly strong. Wang Lu was silent for a long time. That makes sense. He suddenly thought of Shijiujin. Chapter 695. Hai Yunfan really didn't want to do it anymore. It was not that he was dissatisfied with the secretary position. In fact, as a cultivator from the royal family, Hai Yunfan's recognition of the secretary position was far higher than that of ordinary people. His spirit root qualification was not the best. After the Immortal Gathering, Lingjian School recommended him to 10,000 Arts Sect for this reason. Later on, his prospects for development in 10,000 Arts Sect were indeed better. However, compared with the lead disciples like Zhan Zai and Wang Lu, the gap was like the difference between cloud and mud. Hai Yunfan knew that it was difficult for him to reach the end of the path of immortal cultivation. He even deduced his own future and concluded that he would most likely be stuck in the Yuanying stage to deity stage. If he was lucky, he could probably reach the middle-level deity stage. If he wanted to go further, he could only resign himself to fate. Such an achievement was certainly not bad. Even in 10,000 Arts Sect, it could be regarded as outstanding. However, compared to his current work, what was it? Although he was just working for Taoist Master King Pill, the status of this King Pill was no less than that of a supreme in the general sense. He might not be as good as the sect leader of those high-rank sects, but even the elders of ordinary sects had to be polite to Wang Lu. To be the secretary of such a person was something that many Taoist masters of deity stage were eager to do. Because Wang Lu's power was too great, the resources that Wang Lu could use were almost as much as all the resources of a high-rank sect. Even if he went through the formal channel, the remaining resources were also enviable, let alone Wang Lu's informal channel. Of course, the reason why he went through the informal channel for reimbursement of resources was not for his own selfishness. Wang Lu's non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword didn't need much resources, which could be supplied by Lingjian School itself, but there were many ideas about the grand competition that were difficult to do in a formal way. Therefore, he could only intercept the resources and invest in the experiment himself. Wang Lu did not care much about the power and efficiency of the chief planner of the Grand Competition Organizing Committee, but most people definitely cared about it. In immortal cultivation, wealth was the first, and most people's wealth was definitely not enough. Even among the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, only the sect master, head disciple, and some of the higher-ups of the Wanxian League were not restricted in terms of resources. Although the cultivation of the other ordinary elders was not low, they still had to work hard if they wanted resources. Wang Lu's power was astonishing. As his personal secretary, if Hai Yunfan wanted to operate, the benefits he would receive would naturally be indescribable. During this period of time, there was an endless stream of people from various sects asking him to do things for them. Even his wife, Yi Feifei, could not bear it. But he really didn't want to do it now. It wasn't that the treatment wasn't good enough, but that he felt that he wasn't capable enough. He couldn't keep up with the pace of his superiors and was too ashamed to continue enjoying the special treatment. Wang Lu's pace of doing things was too fast. One moment, he was still slacking off in his study room, and the next moment, he decided to leave the City of Immortals and talk to Xian Mo. This guy really didn't think of himself as a leader. He didn't do the work at hand, nor did he make an appointment to meet with Dixian. He just ran away like visiting. If it were someone else, this general who contacted Dixian's side in private at will would be arrested and interrogated to see if there was any act of betrayal. Fortunately, he was Wang Lu, so the possibility of him defecting to the enemy was not high. However, from a procedural point of view, his private contact was no different from a mutiny. Therefore, in order to reduce trouble, someone needed to make this kind of irregular behavior in line with the procedure. This person, of course, could not be anyone else but his secretary, Hai Yunfan. Completing all kinds of procedures for Wang Lu had already given Hai Yunfan a big headache. What was more troublesome was that Wang Lu was too difficult to serve. He completely refused to understand the hard work of his subordinates. As soon as he left, he came back and called Hai Yunfan. "Let's go together." Hai Yunfan immediately became anxious. "You're going to see Dixian, why do you call me?" Wang Lu curiously said, "You're too sloppy as a secretary. How can a leader go out without a secretary? If I go, who will make up the procedures for you?" Hai Yunfan tried to argue. Wang Lu waved his hand. "Write a letter to Supreme He Tu and ask him for help." "Damn, do you really think you're the illegitimate son of Supreme He Tu? You want other people to help you with this kind of thing?" Wang Lu looked at Hai Yunfan, shook his head, and sighed. "Little Hai, you've become so boring after getting married. You might as well get divorced." Hai Yunfan was so angry that he wanted to laugh. "You sound like I betrayed you by getting married." "Pfft, ha ha ha." Wang Wu laughed without caring about her image. "Sure enough, there's an affair. Let me publicize it." Wang Lu was too lazy to pay attention to this woman. At the same time, he also saw that Hai Yunfan couldn't stand the toss. "If you want to stay, then stay. If you don't cherish this kind of good job, then all you have left in this life is to wash diapers for children." As the host, Xian Mo served fragrant tea to the two guests and asked about the purpose of their visit. Wang Lu also went straight to the point. "This time, how are you going to fight in the group battle of Huashan level?" Xian Mo was silent for a long time. "Are you kidding? Running to someone's home to ask such confidential questions, did he want her to be suspected by her companions?" Wang Lu said, "I want to know, do you want to seriously determine the winner or the loser, or do you want to seriously determine the life and death?" Xian Mo then realized what Wang Lu really wanted to ask. "From my point of view, of course, this battle is only about the winner and the loser, not life and death. And the others don't have different opinions at the moment." This answer was, of course, relatively optimistic, but Wang Lu was not satisfied. "Aren't you the leader? Do you need to be so careful with your words? The person who made the decision was not you?" Xian Mo said, "You should have seen that it was not me a long time ago." Wang Lu nodded. "It's good that it's not you. Strictly speaking, I quite like you, and I don't want to count that account on you." Xian Mo didn't care much about Wang Lu's love, but he was a little sad about the account, he said. "Black didn't do that on purpose." Wang Lu smiled and said, "Is it because of a slip of the tongue? Whether it was intentional or not, everyone knows it." Xian Mo was silent for a while and then said, "I'm sorry. You didn't make the decision, so what's the use of apologizing?" Xian Mo was a bit tired. "That's right. But Black has given up that plan, and it should not happen again in the future. In the face of the fallen immortals, we should work together." "That's right. That's why I wonder what the person who made that decision was thinking." Wang Lu seemed a bit reluctant. "Cutting the Gordian knot is a reasonable theory. If you can win with an overwhelming advantage, the internal friction will be smaller than a stalemate. But there is more than one theory that makes sense. Why choose the riskiest one? Didn't he think about the consequences of the backlash from the Wuxia League if the morale is not suppressed? Black, he is indeed such a person. Xian Mo said, he only asks for the result and rarely considers the side effects. As for the backlash. Before that game, no one thought that you would do it so ruthlessly. Wang Lu smiled and said, I did it so ruthlessly. It's not your Dixian's turn to say that. I only killed 2 people, but the number of people in your hands is at least 10 times that. But, let's not talk about the first thing first. Is it convenient for you to tell me the story of Black in detail? Xian Mo obviously didn't want to say too much, but Wang Lu put down the teacup, looked at her attentively, and then said a sentence. I don't trust Black, so I won't trust others who trust Black. On the basis of this distrust, it's difficult for me to do it properly. You said that you have given up the killing plan, but your words don't count. I can't trust you. Xian Mo was suddenly in a dilemma because what Wang Lu said was very reasonable, so she could not refute it at all. If it were someone else, they would probably turn a deaf ear to Wang Lu's threat, but Xian Mo would not. Especially when there was still Wang Wu standing behind Wang Lu. I understand. About Black, I'll give you a brief explanation. However, this made Xian Mo a bit embarrassed. Chapter 696. Xian Mo was an honest person. She said it was a simple story, but in fact, the story was not that simple. She didn't know much about the origin of Black. She only knew that the man appeared in front of her with the former boss and always stood behind the boss. He was very low-key and humble, and even had some inferiority complex. However, although his mentality was humble, once he did things, he was swift and decisive, ruthless and merciless. In the fight against the fallen immortals, he made great contributions with his unique coldness and cruelty. However, he refused to take credit at all. Every time, he would hide behind the scenes, showing his noble character and unquestionable integrity. However, Black's character was indeed eccentric, so people admired him, but they didn't think about pushing him to any leadership position. Black had always been behind the boss, and the boss didn't use him as a commander. What's more, the situation against the fallen immortals at that time was very bad. They couldn't compete with them even if they tried their best, so they didn't care so much about fighting for power. Later, the war suffered a great defeat. The boss died, many people died, and the strongholds were uprooted one by one. The impregnable fortress was vulnerable under the siege of the fallen immortals, and the flag of resistance raised by the Dixian people drifted away in the wind and rain. At that time, almost everyone felt desperate about the situation. Even the murderous ravenous wolf, Shuero too, and the others grinned and said that they would give the other side a little bit of color, and they had the idea of perishing together. Only Black, who remained indifferent from beginning to end, did what he should do step by step according to the boss's order before his death. The boss told him to save as many people as he could. Then, Black saved more than 100 people. This was an almost unimaginable number at that time, because people never thought that Black would be so strong. For many years, he had been standing behind the boss like a shadow. When the boss was gone, people found that this shadow was really the boss's shadow, and had almost the same level of tyrannical strength as the boss. Similarly, people never thought that Black could be so cruel and merciless. In order to save more than 100 people, he chose to sacrifice the same number of people, including several companions who were close to him. At this point, people realized why Black had such a powerful strength, but had been following behind the boss for many years and was willing to be a shadow. It was indeed difficult for such a person to stand on the stage like a boss. However, after a bloody scene, no one could blame him. Black did not really care. He considered himself a sinner. On one hand, he admitted that he was guilty, and on the other hand, he was already used to being a sinner. That's all for the story. Please go back. At this point, Xian Mo suddenly realized that he had said too much. He felt a little tired and directly asked him to leave. However, Wang Lu didn't care about the other party's order to leave. He smiled and said, "Have some tea before you leave." As he said that, he raised the teacup in his hand, which was still half full. Xian Mo looked at Wang Lu. This guy is really shameless. I've been telling a story for almost an hour, and he can't even finish half a cup of tea? I have a question. Wang Lu took a sip of tea. After your boss died, who was responsible? Xian Mo said, "No one is responsible." At that time, there were 3 deputies under the boss. 2 of them have been sacrificed, and Bai Zhe is not suitable to be the leader. The other one is black, but I've just told you about his situation. Wang Lu asked, "What about you?" Xian Mo smiled bitterly. Me? I'm just temporarily pushed out. I don't have the power of a leader, so it's meaningless for you to come to me this time. I don't have the final say. Wang Lu nodded. I understand. It's a pity that you're not a mascot. So this time, I'm not looking for you to discuss business, but to chat. Xian Mo smiled helplessly. Do you think it's appropriate to chat with me at this time? Wang Lu smiled and said, "There's nothing inappropriate about it. Friendship comes first, competition comes second. Our 2 families will have a cooperative relationship in the future. It's not bad to establish a revolutionary friendship in advance." When Xian Mo was about to speak, he saw Wang Wu who was on the side spoke. Well, I think you 2 are a perfect match. It's necessary to establish a deep and thorough friendship with each other. As she spoke, she drank another cup of tea. Wang Wu was not as slow as Wang Lu. She drank half a cup of tea in half an hour. During this time, she had drunk 5 cups of tea, and all of them were refilled by herself. After listening to Wang Wu's words, Xian Mo only felt that the meaning behind the words seemed to be quite vulgar. But to be honest, she didn't quite understand it, so she simply ignored her and focused on talking to Wang Lu. What do you want to know? Wang Lu said, "A few questions. First, you united the elites of 9 regions to establish the Dixian organization and chose a heaven-defying opponent. It's reasonable to say that the organizational structure should be quite perfect." "That's right," said Xian Mo, "although our individual strength is weak, we still have the power to fight if we join forces. This is thanks to the strength of our organization." Wang Lu asked, "Then here's the problem. For any organization, stability is its basic. It can't be that there's no successor when someone dies. When your boss was alive, there should be a successor, right? It shouldn't be black, right?" Xian Mo sighed and said, "The Dixian organization was almost built by the boss alone, so only his prestige can overwhelm everyone. The others are too far behind. Even if the boss decides on a successor, it's useless. Of course, the boss did designate a few people. If he encounters an accident, those people will take over his work. But," Wang Lu asked, "those successors are all dead? What a coincidence." Xian Mo heard that this was a conspiracy theory, so he explained, under the sudden change, the organization was almost completely disintegrated and destroyed. The attack of the fallen immortals was very targeted. The first batch of people who died were almost the backbone of the organization. It's not easy for us to survive. At present, Black is the strongest and has the highest prestige, but he is unwilling to stand out. Moreover, there are many companions who have scruples about him. Wang Lu asked, "Since there are scruples, why would anyone listen to him?" Xian Mo knew that this was another question about the previous killing, so he explained, because before the boss died, he said to trust Black. Wang Lu asked, "But he didn't pass on the position to him." "There's no way, and Black won't accept it. He only makes a move when necessary. Only in this way can we really trust him. Wang Lu pondered and said, "This internal disagreement is so big that it can't be any more. Is that why your Dixian organization has become so loose now? We were going to sleep forever. This resuscitation was an accident. No one knows what to do." Xian Mo said, "To be honest, I've been thinking about what it would be like if we didn't wake up. Would it be better for 9 regions? After all, we are already people of the past." Wang Lu was a little surprised. "Your position is a bit strange. It seems to be somewhat inconsistent with the mainstream of Dixian." Wang Wu almost choked on her tea. She quickly reached out and poked Wang Lu's back and whispered, "It looks like there's a chance. Try to win it and win glory for the country." Xian Mo looked at Wang Lu and smiled helplessly. "Don't go out and talk nonsense. These words should only be said when we are chatting." Wang Lu said, "Rest assured. If this kind of words were said, we would have one less ally to break into the enemy's territory." Xian Mo smiled bitterly. He actually became an ally of the Wuxia League? No wonder his companions have been looking at him strangely recently. In short, you have heard the story you want to hear. If there's nothing else, Wang Lu quickly waved his hand. "Yes, why not? One last question." Xian Mo cheered up. "Say it." Wang Lu was silent for a while, then asked with a smile, "I think there is no future in Dixian. Do you want to come with us? The treatment will be good." Half an hour later, in the courtyard of the Immortal 5 area, Wang Lu returned to his workstation, but he was not in the mood to work. He concentrated on sighing. Hai Yunfan, the secretary, was still outside at this time, completing the formalities for Wang Lu. There were only him and Wang Wu in the room. Chapter 697. It seems that we don't have to worry too much about the Soul Formation stage team battle. When Hai Yunfan returned to the office with a thick pile of materials, he saw Wang Lu, who had a well-thought-out plan. "What do you mean?" Hai Yunfan asked, enduring his exhaustion. "They are not of one mind." Wang Lu was concise. "It's fine if it's a one-on-one battle, but no one will kill them in a team battle." Hai Yunfan wanted to ask how he knew, but considering that Wang Lu had just gone to Dixian's house, he might have some confidential information, so he didn't ask anymore. Moreover, it was definitely a good thing that Dixian people were not of one mind. It could effectively reduce the intensity of work in the future. Overtime like the recent one should be avoided as much as possible. Thinking of this, Hai Yunfan was slightly relieved. "So, the compensation plan can be postponed?" Wang Lu thought for a moment. "Be prepared for both sides. Make one first." Hai Yunfan sighed. This was the disgusting part of being a secretary. With just a thought from the leader, the subordinates would have to run all over the place. But of course, he couldn't be the only one to suffer. Hai Yunfan nodded and took over the work given by Wang Lu. He turned his head and asked, "Then what about your plan for the team battle? The situation has changed. Do you have to make a new plan?" Wang Lu thought for a moment. "Pick up the previous one and look at it again." Hai Yunfan said, "You burned it yourself." Wang Lu said, "I know, so please make a new one for me. Anyway, you participated in the previous one, so you should be able to do it, right?" Hai Yunfan wanted to vomit blood. "Of course I can do it, but how many things do I have on hand right now?" Wang Lu thought for a moment. "Why don't you call your wife to work overtime together? It'll be good to relieve your lovesickness. Some hardships are enough for me. I won't drag Fei with me. You really have no sense of loyalty." Wang Lu looked at Hai Yunfan with disdain. Husband and wife can't go through thick and thin together. You're going to cheat. Hai Yunfan held it in for a long time. If you keep talking nonsense, I'll take sick leave. Wang Lu shook his head. Forget it, let's not talk nonsense. Work, work. Then he buried his head in sorting out the battle plan. A day later, the proposal was released and sent to all relevant personnel. The group battle between deity transformation stage experts was the focus of everyone's attention. Everyone attached great importance to it, and at the same time, they were also very nervous. Several deity transformation stage perfected masters who participated in the competition had all secluded themselves after receiving the plan, even though there was only a short period of time before the actual competition began. The only one who could be considered relaxed was Feng Yin Daoist master. The leader of the team of divinity transformation stage cultivators was neither training in seclusion nor preparing for the upcoming battle. Instead, he was living and training as usual. Right now, he also held a position in the organizing committee of the grand competition, but most of his time was spent on Spirit Sword Mountain, sometimes stargazing, sometimes practicing swordsmanship. He appeared to be relaxed, which made Wang Wu, who occasionally returned to the mountain, scold the old thing for having a double standard, being harsh to others but indulging himself. Feng Yin Daoist master really didn't care much about this group battle. Because long before Wang Lu made his judgment, he had judged through the stellar diffraction technique that this battle would be more daunting than dangerous, so there was no need to be as nervous as the outside world. Of course, the result of the stellar diffraction technique was not absolutely correct. Therefore, Feng Yin did not disclose it to outsiders. He just sat alone on the stellar peak, smiling at the rolling mortal world at the foot of the mountain. His jade mansion and immortal heart reflected the mortal world and became more refined and condensed. Feng Yin narrowed his eyes. The world under the mountain was divided into countless lines in front of his eyes, which extended infinitely into the distance. Feng Yin tried to make his heart calmer so that he could see it more clearly. However, at this time, a ripple set off behind him, which disturbed the calm lake of his heart. Senior brother sect leader, you're in a good mood, aren't you? You're actually playing at the top of the mountain. Feng Yin's mood suddenly turned bad. How come you're here? Didn't I ask you to help Wang Lu? Wang Wu spread out her hands. I came to help him find you. Feng Yin was also surprised. He didn't expect that this guy was actually doing something serious. What do you want from me? Wang Wu said, let me think about it. Feng Yin took back his words, and at the same time, his mood became even worse. By the way, I want to ask, how are your preparations going? Feng Yin said, this battle should be fine. Wang Wu said, it's better to be safe than sorry. Have you ever thought about what to do after? Feng Yin said. Is this what Wang Lu asked you to ask? Wang Wu said, this is what I came up with my subjective initiative. Don't interrupt me, answer me first. In case you die on the battlefield, who will be the sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect? Although Wang Lu is the proper successor to the lead disciple, his age is too young and his cultivation base is too low. How about I be wrong to be the sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect? Feng Yin chuckled twice. Get lost. Yo, sect leader, senior brother, your get lost word sounds weak, which is really worrying. Why don't you take a good rest for a few days and let me temporarily take over the position of sect leader? Feng Yin said, you don't want the offering anymore. Wang Wu sneered. Senior brother, you're doing this again. Have you forgotten what my identity is now? Why would I care about those hundreds of spirit stones? Feng Yin said, hundreds of spirit stones? Your tribute for this period is 5 million. Wang Wu was shocked. Senior brother, you've really gone crazy and lost your mind. When did I have 5 million offerings? How much is the annual financial income of our Lingjian school? Didn't you win a key game in the grand competition? Later on, Wang Lu used this as a reason to grant you a bonus of 5 million, 1,000 gold to buy a horse's bones. Wang Wu was dumbfounded. When did that happen? How come I don't know about it? Moreover, since it's my bonus, how could it run into your hands and become the sect's offering? Feng Yin said, Wang Lu directly gave it to the sect, so of course it's in my hands. Other people won't want this spirit stone, so in the end, it must be given to you. But if you insist on neglecting your duty, then I have to confiscate that spirit stone. Absolutely not. Wang Wu hurriedly stopped him and then gritted her teeth. This dirty trick must be done by Wang Lu. I suggest disqualifying him as the lead disciple. Feng Yin said. What are you doing here? Wang Wu was silent for a moment, and then said with a smile, Can't I come to see you? Feng Yin scolded, Get out of here, don't give me trouble. After sending away Wang Wu, this god of plague, Feng Yin finally breathed a sigh of relief, but a smile slowly appeared on his face. This idiot was still as stupid as before. When her big brother was still alive, she was not good at expressing herself. Every day, she was like a puppet, cultivating and cultivating. After her big brother's death, her temperament changed greatly. She looked warm and cheerful, but in fact, she was still not good at expressing herself. Just now, she clearly came to see him. After all, the deity stage group battle was imminent, and no one dared to say that they had full confidence. However, Wang Wu's way of visiting people was quite special, which was really hateful. After lamenting Wang Wu, Feng Yin was not annoyed, but it was difficult to restore his previous tranquility. In front of him, the fine lines leading to the infinite depths had become tangled with each other, and his stellar diffraction technique could no longer see the future. If he couldn't see it clearly, he would stop looking. Feng Yin's dependence on the stellar diffraction technique had become less and less, and he was no longer so sure about the result. Moreover, in this deity stage group battle, whether there was a stellar diffraction technique or not, he firmly believed that it would be a daunting experience without any mishap. Because, after all, he was going to do it himself, so how could he fail? In Lingjian School, those who were good at cross-level challenges were not only the two on non-phase peak. In the Western continent, Feng Yin had shown his edge, so no one would really regard him as an ordinary peak deity stage cultivator. However, above deity stage, how much leeway did he have? Measured by the standard of supreme level, was he at the top level alongside he two and the others, or was he one level lower, or two levels lower? Even Wang Lu was not clear about these things. Of course, it was also because he didn't want to know too much. The elders of Lingjian School were seriously his junior brothers and sisters, and their relationship was delicate. In the past 100 years, from a good point of view, he sacrificed himself to buy time for Lingjian School. However, from another point of view, the most difficult 100 years of Lingjian School was because his junior brothers and sisters were self-reliant without him, supporting the school from scratch. Therefore, so far, the strength of Feng Yin Daoist master was quite mysterious. When Wang Lu made the plan, he only conservatively labeled Feng Yin as peak deity stage plus 10, which tacitly agreed that he was equivalent to an upper-middle level supreme cultivator. However, other people didn't know the actual situation, but how could Feng Yin himself not know? It's just, why do I start to feel a little uneasy in my heart? When Feng Yin returned to the bamboo room, he did not deliberately pursue the calm lake of his heart. It was just that, after being visited by Wang Wu, he always felt that something was wrong. He took out the Kunlun mirror and looked at the future again. The countless lines became more chaotic, and the place where the lines condensed seemed to be pregnant with ominous signs. It was just strange that this ominous sign did not point to him. No matter how vague and biased the stellar diffraction technique was, it should be able to predict his own good or bad luck. Could it be that in this deity stage group fight, he could be safe and sound, but others might encounter misfortune? Thinking of this, Feng Yin picked up the pen and wrote a letter to Wang Lu in the City of Immortals. Hey, there's an ominous sign ahead. What is sect leader Reverend doing this time? In the courtyard of Immortal 5 area, Wang Lu soon received an urgent flying sword message from Spirit Sword Mountain. Looking at Feng Yin Daoist Master's detailed description of what he saw and felt in his heart, Wang Lu was puzzled. According to Wang Lu's current information, in this deity stage group fight, at most, they would lose the competition. Of course, this was also quite serious. However, the meaning of Feng Yin's letter seemed to be that the result of this group fight was worse than losing. This made Wang Lu entangled. Not long ago, he had just inquired about the information from Xian Mo, which probably said that there should be no danger in this battle. However, in the blink of an eye, Feng Yin Daoist Master came to slap his face. However, Wang Lu still couldn't ignore it. Feng Yin was a very stable person, although sometimes he didn't pay attention to the details. He was mostly reliable in big things. Otherwise, he would not have appointed him to take over the Lingjian school. Therefore, when Feng Yin wrote such a solemn letter, he had to pay attention to it. The question was, how should he pay attention to it? Holding the sincerity paper in his hand, Wang Lu became more and more confused. Chapter 698. In the central arena of Immortal 1 area, the noise was deafening. As soon as one entered the arena, one could feel the resonance of the rolling sound waves, which made all the hairs on one's body stand up. A wave of heat made people blush and sweat appeared on their foreheads. This place was guarded by the Tranquility Array and had a constant and pleasant temperature. At this time, it was ignited by the enthusiasm of millions of spectators, as if a flame was burning, which made people unable to help but melt in it, laughing and shouting loudly with the people around them. Even though the contestants had not yet entered the arena, the atmosphere in the arena had already heated up. Because admission to the grand competition was not by ticket, and the good seats were first come, first served, many people came here long in advance to wait. In any case, for cultivators who were accustomed to secluded cultivation and had a long life, waiting for 3 to 5 days was nothing. At this time, the competition was about to begin, and the few days of boring waiting seemed to be worth it. After an hour of noise, the atmosphere in the audience only increased. Many people who came later could not find a seat, so they would rather stand. Later on, they could not stand, and the arena did not allow flying swords to float, so they had to show their magical abilities. Some people with higher cultivation base wanted to use the spatial technique of mustard seed to open up their immortal's cave. As a result, as soon as they made their move, they were bounced out by the array in the arena and returned resentfully. Some clever ones came up with a way to directly use the transformation technique to turn themselves into something like a fly or a mosquito. Suddenly, they felt that the space inside the arena was really vast. Of course, although this kind of insignificant skill could solve the problem, it was really not good enough. As cultivators, most of them were people with prestige. Most of them could not bear to be so vicious to themselves, so they could only sigh. Just as everyone was displaying their abilities, a few people finally walked onto the empty rostrum. It immediately attracted the attention of countless people. They were the senior leaders of the Wuxia League, He Tu, Kuqin, Zhuri, Tianluan. Feng Yin did not attend because he would go on stage in a while, so there was no need to go to the rostrum. In addition to the leaders of the 4 major sects, the rest of the high-level leaders followed. Among this group of people, the figure of Wang Lu was particularly eye-catching. With his King Pill stage, Wang Lu was ranked among the many supreme cultivators. He was truly a strange flower in 9 regions. However, this strange flower was very popular. After he appeared, the cheers from the audience were like a huge wave, which was even louder than when he too and the others appeared. Wang Lu waved at the crowd in a very straightforward manner. Hearing this, the cultivators of Xingjing sect and Royal Soldier sect were obviously a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, the sect leader was shrewd enough to keep his composure. While Wang Lu and the red-robed old ancestor were talking, the cheerleaders of the Sea of Constellations finally began to quiet down. Because the people on the opposite side had also begun to enter the arena, no matter how good the people of the Sea of Constellations were at bragging, they wouldn't be able to brag to the opposite side. Thus, they all sat back in their original positions to rest. However, before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, they saw the cultivators of the Sea of Constellations take out all kinds of throat care pills. The colorful medicine bottles were very beautiful. A moment later, there was also a pot of jade pear ice soup. The color was amber, and it was sweet and pleasant. The cultivators took the medicine and drank the soup, contentedly beginning to care for their throats. These cultivators had no other strong points, but they had reached the pinnacle of this crooked way. At this time, in order to conserve their energy for the next match, they showed a very strong professional quality. In addition to the medicine soup, they also set up the purifying stainless array to purify the air. They also took out a pot of dew flower branches, which overflowed with a dense mist. As soon as the surrounding people smelled it, they felt a clear and cold sensation in their throats, which was indescribably comfortable. The Sea of Constellations was a remote corner of the 9 regions, and the cultivators here were often regarded as natives. The strongest cultivator in the sect was only a Yuanying stage cultivator, and it was still a weak Yuanying -3 or -4, which was really not good enough to be seen in public. Today, they were specially invited by Wang Lu to shine in front of the tens of thousands of people. These cultivators were highly excited. They rubbed their palms and from time to time, murmuring sounds came from their throats, which made the spectators sitting nearby feel terrified. Not long after, the match officially began. The cultivators of the Sea of Constellations kept their soldiers for 1,000 days, fully displaying the results of their maintenance. Feng Yin Taoist Master, domineering in the universe, unparalleled in the world. For this match, the Wuxia League gave everything they had. Everyone knew that the odds of winning were slim, so they would do anything that could increase their odds of winning, even if it seemed ridiculous. For example, the cheerleaders from the Sea of Constellations, the mysterious porcelain bottle contributed by the Kunlun Immortal Mountain before the match, the enthusiastic and cheerful human furnace team provided by the Yin and Yang sect, and the exotic delicacies offered by their friends from the Western continent who had the bloodline of the dragon race. According to Wang Lu, if they lost the match, they would have to eat the exotic delicacies until they were full. At the same time, the Wuxia League was prepared to pay a heavy price, although Wang Lu had communicated with Xian Mo in advance, and theoretically, there shouldn't be any heavy casualties. The battlefield was ever-changing. Who could guarantee that there wouldn't be any accidents? Therefore, at the beginning of the match, the eyes of countless cultivators in the audience gathered on the field, nervously praying for the people on the field. In people's expectation, there were only the following situations that might happen: the union of 10,000 immortals, whose individual strength and team cooperation were lagging behind, would be easily crushed by the Earth Immortals, and Wang Lu's battle plan would be difficult to reverse. Or, in the case of falling behind in strength, the cultivators would struggle to hold on, and finally rely on an unexpected point to turn the tables at the critical moment, narrowly winning the match. Or, they would take advantage of Feng Yin Taoist Master's tyrannical strength to constantly move around, looking for opportunities to provoke the rhythm and finally win the match. But no matter what the possibility was, the Wuxia League would face a very difficult situation. After all, the gap in strength was obvious. However, after 2 hours, the audience was almost silent. People looked at everything that happened in the field in disbelief. They were tongue-tied, and waves of emotions surged in their hearts. The feeling was indescribable. In the field, 5 cultivators stood on the Milky Way sword array, and their immortal spells were like a storm, suppressing their opponents in the corner of the stone forest. Of the 5 opponents, only 3 were left, and they barely formed a 3 talents formation, struggling under the fierce attacks. Such a situation was actually perfectly in line with the initial expectations of many people. Because of the gap in strength, 1 or 2 people were killed in seconds, and the remaining 3 people tried their best to protect themselves, struggling at death's door, and then they were defeated miserably after a cup of tea's time. But no one expected that the one being suppressed in the corner was not the Wuxia League's team, but Dixian. Xuan Xian, Xian Mo, Bai Zai. They were suppressed by the storm-like spells, and from time to time, they had to deal with Feng Yin Daoist Master's starry immortal sword. The scene was unspeakable. And not far in front of the 3 of them, there were Shuoro II and Mirage Boy's bodies, which were split into 2. The bodies were real bodies, corpses that couldn't be resurrected. Even if the Dixian had great supernatural powers, they would still die, and after death, they would become corpses, and this was the scene in front of them. Shuoro II and Mirage Boy, these 2 were also well-known figures in the Dixian camp. Mirage Boy once fought with Wang Wu, and although he was defeated, he showed his amazing attainments in illusions. In the battle between Shuoro II and Zhu Shiyao, although he was beaten by a sword, he still won by a narrow margin. These 2 were undoubtedly strong in the Dixian camp, and even the most optimistic people would not have predicted their deaths before the start of the competition. But they died just like that. Less than half an hour after the start of the battle, the lone Shuoro II was successfully attacked by Feng Yin. The starry immortal sword bypassed the human skin apron and went straight for Shuoro II's vital point, nailing Shuoro II's primordial spirit. Shuoro II was seriously injured and fled. Feng Yin's heart was moved and he wanted to show mercy, but the Feng Tian generals from the royal soldier sect were merciless. With one chop of his axe, Shuoro II died. At that time, when the Feng Tian generals found out that Shuoro II was really dead and couldn't be resurrected, they were very surprised and touched their head with their bloody hands. Why is this son of a bitch so weak? After the death of Shuoro II, Feng Yin Daoist Master did the same thing and severely injured Mirage Boy. This Dixian with perfect illusions, for some reason, actually revealed a flaw in the illusion protection array, and his primordial spirit was also nailed. Then, the Feng Tian generals finished with one chop of the axe. Finally, looking at the 2 halves of the corpse, they were puzzled. Did they do it on purpose? Chapter 699. No one would deliberately die, especially these cultivators who had experienced the battle of the fallen immortals. They should be more able to realize the preciousness of life and should do everything possible to prolong their lives instead of courting death themselves. However, if they didn't court death themselves, it was difficult for people to understand why Shuoro II and Mirage Boy would die like this. The deaths of the 2 were almost the same. First, they were alone, then they were ambushed by Feng Yin. After being seriously injured and unable to struggle, they were finally killed by the Feng Tian general's axe. There were 3 unreasonable points in this process. First, why were they alone? The rule of the 5-person team battle was to put the 2 teams in a vast space, and then look for each other and fight. This kind of battle should have been more advantageous for Dixian, who had a tacit understanding and rich combat experience. They could allocate their forces more appropriately and choose the right people to investigate, set up ambushes, harvest, and so on. However, the result was that Xiaofan and Mirage Boy did not respond to the main force at all. Soon after the battle started, they parted ways with the other three and played their own game. This simply gave people a chance to break them one by one. Otherwise, with the 5 of Dixian in a group, how could Feng Yin find a chance to sneak attack? As soon as the Stellar Immortal Sword was used, it would be blocked by the negation seal. What's more, it stood to reason that with Xuan Xian present, Feng Yin's stellar diffraction technique would be severely interfered with, and there was almost no possibility of a successful ambush. However, it was obvious that Xuan Xian did not care about the two people at all during the battle, allowing them to be schemed against by Feng Yin. Secondly, after Xiaofan and Mirage Boy were ambushed, they fell too quickly. After being ambushed by Feng Yin, it was inevitable that the two of them could not fight, no matter how fierce Dixian was. After being ambushed, it was absolutely impossible for him to fight against 5 people alone. But even if he could not win, he should at least be able to hold on for a while. Based on the strength that Feng Yin Daoist master had displayed, he should be able to hold on for a while under the encirclement of the 5. Xiaofan and the Mirage Boy were not as good as Feng Yin, a master divinity transformation stage cultivator, could they? But in reality, their performance was indeed inferior. After their defense was broken by Feng Yin's sword, their primordial spirits were exposed without any defense. Then, with another sword, their primordial spirits were nailed to death, and they had no ability to resist. In the end, when the Feng Tian General Sky-Splitting Axe came down, they didn't even have time to react before they were hit. Was this how a Dixian should behave? Apart from these two, the performance of the other 3 was also far below expectations. Xuan Xian was known as the calculator of lives, but in a match with a total of 10 people, he could not calculate anything. He could not calculate that Xiaofan and the Mirage Boy would die. He could not calculate that without the 2 of them, the 3 of them would not be able to fight against the opponent. He could not even calculate that if it were not for Feng Yin's mercy, the big axe in the hands of the Feng Tian generals would have been stained with the blood of more corpses. Bai Zhe also did not have much of a state. Before the battle started, he was like a dead man, allowing the 2 people to leave the team without any persuasion. It was as if he was sleepwalking in the team of 3. After the battle started, he was injured by Feng Yin, but he did raise his spirits. He repeatedly used the negation seal, but it was disorderly and seemed absent-minded. He did not have the demeanor that a Dixian should have. Xian Mo was the only one who tried her best, but no matter how strong she was, it was impossible for her to fight against 5 people alone. Moreover, it was obvious that she was very dissatisfied with the situation of the team. With 2 rookies by her side, she could not fight with all her energy. And then, the result was what it was now. The team of 5 had lost 2 people, and the remaining 3 had lost their will to fight. At this point, the outcome of this team battle could be said to have been decided. The Wuxia League had won a great victory. However, when people saw this scene, while they rejoiced, they found it even more unbelievable and inconceivable. Why? Of course, winning was a good thing, but there must always be a reason. This kind of unknown victory was really frightening. Therefore, even if they had an overwhelming advantage in the situation, people would still worry if this was a conspiracy. They would worry if the 2 corpses of the 2 people would suddenly come back to life. They would worry that Bai Zhe, Xian Mo, and Xuan Xian would have some powerful trump card that was about to be revealed. In the audience stand, millions of people watched the Wuxia League's advantage continue to accumulate. Feng Yin Daoist Master, Feng Tian Generals, Fairy Bell Sound, Scarlet Thunder, Daoist White Bone. They flew around the field like flowers. From time to time, they set off a bloody light, leaving terrible wounds on the body of the Dixian side. Finally, when Xuan Xian's 17th attempt to interrupt Feng Yin's flying sword failed, he sighed helplessly and said, "I admit defeat." Thus, at the end of the match, the Wuxia League won a great victory. They replaced 2 of the opponent's generals with 0 casualties, and also won more than 1,500 points in the grand competition. In one fell swoop, the difference between the 2 camps was reduced to less than 1,000 points. Wang Lu nodded and said, "You're a promising student." "Promising your ass. I'm still here." Wang Wu angrily slapped the table and said, "You guys think I don't exist? And who told you that I didn't work hard? If it weren't for me, how could they win so easily?" Wang Lu immediately asked, "Please explain in detail, do you have any connection with this victory? I am your master, and you are the chief planner of this competition. Is this connection close enough?" Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, "Have I not severed the relationship between you and me? Do you have to be so fierce? All right, what do you want me to do? Just say it. Don't make fun of a sensitive topic like the subsidy." Wang Lu then seriously said, "There is indeed one thing that I want to ask you to accompany me to the group of immortal tombs again. I also want to talk to Xian Mo." Wang Wu was taken aback. "You still want to look for Xian Mo? Do you really not want to give up until you kill her? Look for her before the competition, look for her again after the competition, pay attention to the melon field. It's rare for her to be close to us in the Dixian camp. It's not good for anyone to force her into a corner." After a pause, Wang Wu showed an even more surprised expression. "Or do you really have a relationship with that girl? Not bad, little Wang Lu, you've unknowingly grown up and began to look for a woman. Xian Mo is a good girl, remember to call me when you're tired of playing with her." Wang Lu sighed and directly ignored his master's nonsense. "I still don't understand what's going on in that competition. The Dixian team's loss is too strange." Wang Wu sneered. "What's strange about it? It's clear that the Dixian team doesn't want to win and gave up the victory. Anyone who has seen that scene would understand. The problem is, why did they give up the victory? The score of this competition is as high as 1,500, it's not something that can be easily given up. Moreover, what about Shuero 2 and Mirage Boy? They even gave up their lives?" Wang Wu said, "Isn't it obvious? They offended someone and were pushed out as a target." Wang Lu said, "Shuero 2 and Bai Zai, those 2 slaughtering demons, can be ignored, but Xian Mo's temper also offended people." Wang Wu said, "It's probably because he's pregnant with your flesh and blood, so he's regarded as an impure person." Wang Lu said, "Let's not talk about anything else. This group of Dixian team members are comrades who fought against the fallen immortals together. They have gone through life and death together. What kind of contradiction would make them kill people with a borrowed knife in this kind of competition? In the end, the grand competition is just a competition. So what if the Dixian team lost? It's nothing more than losing the initiative of the next step, and the people are still the same. Or it's because the victory of this competition is not so important that their own lives and team harmony are more important. Now they don't even care about the overall situation. To what extent has the internal contradiction accumulated?" Listening to Wang Lu's words, Hai Yunfan interrupted, "These are all your assumptions, right? Do you have anything to support it?" Wang Lu said, "That's why I want to find Xian Mo and ask him about it. This matter involves the overall rhythm of the grand competition, so we must be careful. So, someone, in the name of doing odd jobs here, you slack off every day and receive high subsidies. Shouldn't you do something serious once in a while?" Wang Wu sighed and said, "Very well, who told me to work hard? Just tell me the time, I'll accompany you to the Dragon's Pool and Tiger's Den." You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.